Any word from Thomas? Well,
Nope.
he'll probably be coming in a minute.
He's driving.
All right. We ready to go, Neil?
We are ready.
All right. Welcome everyone to tonight's select board meeting. Today is Monday, December 11th. I'm Sabrina Dunlap. We have Ken Trom, Stephen Whitley, Jeff Donahoe, and hopefully Thomas Lipoma will be joining us shortly. So first up, we have points of pride.
Sure. I have three that I just wanted to highlight. First, Kara, who has been doing minutes constantly. We all meet when we meet weekly. It's a lot of minutes during budget season. So thank you for having them all done. And to Dan Kuchar, who is our buildings person, who is doing construction and things are coming along very quickly. Maybe at the next meeting, we'll have a tour. So
Exciting.
And also Kelly Henley, our finance director, who this time of year it's a little crazy. We had our pre-audit today. And Christine, our town clerk tax collector, has a lot to do with that too. But there's a lot to do to make sure everything's done by the end of the year. So thank you to them.
I'd like to start by thanking Neil for arranging for representatives of the New Hampshire Municipal Association to come to speak at the budget committee, explaining the roles, and because that's always a question within the budget committee. And I'd also like to thank everybody that came or zoomed into the public hearing for community power last Tuesday, I believe. It was last Monday. It was very well attended, and I was actually on a conference call with other community power entities the next day and said we had about 25 people, and it sounded like it was a very good turnout compared to other towns. So I want to thank everybody in town for showing, and Mark Zankel for leading the presentation.
I couldn't make that, but I did make the budget meeting. I thought that was very informative and helpful. Thanks for organizing that, Neil. Anyone else? All right. So first up is approval of the consent agenda.
I'll move we can approve the consent agenda of December 11, 2023.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, we have two sets of public meeting minutes, one from November 20th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the second public meeting minutes from November 27th, 2023.
I'll move we approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. So we have a public appointment, but that's not until 6. So we can start with old business. First up is the 2024 budget update, which doesn't seem old, but
Yeah, just so everything has been shared with everybody. It's ready for the budget committee. It goes to them on Wednesday. So
okay.
And I'll note too, as we start, that originally we were scheduled to have the Webster Select Board here at 5:30, but they were unable to make it. So
Okay. So Ken, you're presenting Wednesday.
With Neil's help.
Is that at 5:30 or 6?
5:30.
I'm going to try to, I might have to zoom in, but I'll try to be there. But I know you'll do great.
We'll see.
we'll try to get the presentation done by then.
Okay. And then meeting with the fair board.
Yes. So if you remember, they had asked to meet, and so I got an email this week saying there were free nights this week, although I'm not sure. I know most of you have meetings at different nights. But if there's another time, it sounded like their board was happy to do an evening, preferred to do an evening. Probably more of them can make it to that. So I don't know if there's a time to go back with that.
You trying to do this week or next week?
They said they were free this week, although this week with the budget presentation and everything, this is a pretty busy week. And it may not be able to happen until after the first of the year, given the schedule over the next few weeks, but if you
If they
have,
have any night, I mean, I'm around next week. I don't know if other people are, if we have enough. You around?
Mhm.
If they're free next week.
Okay.
I mean, we
I
can probably
will-
make that work.
I'll check with them.
Otherwise, it's a 2024 problem.
Just for next week, I think the only evening that I could do is the 19th,
Think we,
Tuesday, sorry, Tuesday, the 19th.
Is the only one you can do.
Only one I can do next week. Yeah.
All right. I'll aim for that one.
Okay. So moving on to new business. First up is the transfer station.
Sure. So this was actually the discussion that was supposed to happen with Webster.
Mhm.
So, but the draft ordinance update is in there as well as the fee schedule. So I don't know if you have any discussion you want to have now, or if you want to wait till Webster's here. And then it would have to go, both fees and ordinance would have to go to public hearing
Okay.
after that anyways.
And they both have to be agreed on by both select boards.
Right.
And then the fee schedule, the changes to that now, those numbers came from the
NRA.
NRA.
They originally came from them. The only change to what was there was the discussion that happened here around the tipping fee.
Right.
I did go and look at some other towns and they look in line. So I don't think they've dramatically changed.
so Neil, is opposed to the existing fee schedule, the only significant change is tipping fee?
Yeah, well, it updates everything. That's the only one that didn't come from the discussion. That was updated after the fact. Based on the conversations that happened here over the last few weeks.
Do we think we can change the price of the bags before this hearing? Or recommend to change the price of the bags before this hearing?
You can do that anytime.
Okay.
If you want to do that at the same time, that would be a
Well, I mean,
public
if we're
hearing
gonna-
too, and
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna change,
it makes some sense. It
Yeah.
makes sense.
You have a thought on, you have an increase in mind?
I don't have a specific increase in mind, but I would like to see us get it done because it's been since town meeting. We haven't done a damn thing, so.
Yep. Okay, so. Did they say when, did you already tell us when Webster can meet?
They can't meet again till January. Their
Okay.
chair is gone, so.
Okay,
Okay.
So probably we're aiming for January 8th, which is your first meeting in January.
but I mean, also in terms of the way that we're hoping to structure the relationship between the two towns, it seems like both Hopkinton and Webster are hoping to have more of Hopkinton take the lead on making changes, suggesting them to the Webster and having them agree on them. So would we expect them to make? Are they expecting us to come with like a fully proposed proposal of changes and?
So they've seen those changes too.
Okay.
So they've seen those and we've seen those. So,
Okay.
yeah. But when you meet with them, if you want to have that discussion as to how this is how it's been done, how it gets done under the new agreement, provided it passes, could be an item for discussion.
As far as the change from a part-time to a full-time position, are they on board with that, or do they have a say?
That was going to be the discussion tonight, so they have not met since you've done that.
Okay. But they're aware of that though.
I sent them everything.
Okay.
okay. Ready to move on to financials?
Yes.
Well, so are we presenting, or is this the one we're gonna present?
th- Sure, it's up fairly high.
Is it
We can't go too much higher,
really?
so
Speak more in the microphone.
we could, yeah, I think that will, people closer.
What's that?
If we speak
People
into the
speak
microphone, does that
closer.
help?
It does help.
So Thomas, you're asking about the red line.
Yeah, so like,
Yeah.
is this the exact thing that we're gonna propose? Cause this is the only time we fully discussed like the changes. to the
Right,
ordinance,
so if you want to.
Yeah.
Change it. But you could also change it in joint discussion with them
And it still has to go to a public hearing.
after that, right?
Cause I generally agree with Jeff that if we're gonna make any changes, we should also definitely be making green bag pricing changes.
So do you want a recommended green bag price? We could certainly do that. There's very different philosophies on that. We can provide information for you to make a decision on that.
But that doesn't have to be jointly with them.
That's correct. It wouldn't be.
Yep, and there's time to have a recommendation. We don't have to do that tonight. We could get information at the next meeting where they're there and deal with that and then schedule the public hearing.
And then
after that.
do the public hearing right after.
Yeah.
One right after the other.
Yeah, okay.
In your preview, does it show you? Yeah, like this section of the red lines is all messed up.
Mm,
So
Yeah.
there's the red, I think red was Webster's and blue is mine, or the other way around. One of the,
One or the other.
but that's just the gobbledygook at the end. I think it's just the summary.
No, I know.
but
So where's the actual price changes though?
It's
It's a
in the,
different,
that's a
Yeah,
whole
the
different
section.
document.
There,
Transportation piece.
So it's been changed, so it is a separate document because it. I think it should
That's
be
much, but yeah.
And but this one's not redlined. This is just,
correct.
and it's just the tipping fee is the only change on this?
Um, they all changed. Thomas's question was, did these come from the transfer station? And all of them did except for the tipping fees, because those were changed after that work had been done prior to your conversation and then your discussion. This was the tipping fee you had talked about.
Why do we have no charge for metal? Is that just how?
As we make money.
You want to talk more about fees, transfer station?
it seems like a large jump on the tipping fee with no real large jump on like normal residential. So that would be my only real concern. Like anyone who's bringing a green bag, taxpayers are subsidizing that transfer. And anyone who's using a commercial hauler is paying extra or is paying more than if you were using green bags.
For now.
Right.
And what's the increase? 66%?
It's a,
Of 90 to 150?
yeah,
It was 90.
that's what we've
Yeah.
been at, yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine the green bags are gonna go up at least that much.
Yeah, I don't know.
Where's I'm looking for our current fees. I'm just not seeing them on,
And I had a hard time finding them to
guys, I'm not the only one.
attach them.
Yeah.
So,
I think it would be helpful to have that for the meeting in January, just to have some context for what sort of a change we're proposing.
Did the NRA report, did it have a breakdown of other towns tipping fees? Or just a suggestion?
They do have some on their website.
Okay.
That report did not, but what's on their website, I believe, is 2020. So we did look at other.
Okay.
We looked at that plus other more current. But they did recommend a tipping fee, the 150 tipping fee that was in the report.
I'm totally fine if this is the starting point.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would personally want to dive into like surrounding towns just to understand it a little bit more. But as a starting point, I mean, this seems fine.
Okay. We good to move on to year-to-date financials?
Sure. Very little to report because you've been staring at these for weeks at this point. On revenues, I would just note, under land use change tax, there's still a quarter's worth of those funds to be transferred to conservation. So that will come out of there. And pilots are coming in now. This is through the end of November, but they are coming in now. And if you look at revenue at the end of November, we were under remaining to be collected was 710,000. 562,000 of that is room and meals. And you throw in a month's worth of motor vehicle, we're in good shape.
Or any reason to change the estimate for fund balance use
No,
to use? Okay.
not yet.
Good try, Ken.
What about sale of tax deeded properties? That's running low.
Yeah, and it probably will at this point. And then on expense, I'll just note under executive that there's a grant in there, which is why it looks over expended. Cemeteries, I believe the funds from the trust fund came in have come in now, but they weren't in at the end of November. And really expenses are in good shape also. As we wrap up the year, the fact that it hasn't snowed helps. Certainly that could change the December expenses dramatically. So looks like no snow this week.
So for reval of property, 4150, count 4152, are we going to be encumbering funds at the end of the year for that, or?
You voted to encumber funds moments ago.
Okay. And vendor payments for under welfare for other, that jumped in November is a specific reason.
Nope, but we should be we're in good shape there. So it always jumps as you go into winter.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Neil. So next up is Budget Committee training update.
Just if Ken had anything, but I think he kind of covered it already.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, in the points of pride that Neil arranged for a couple of representatives from the municipal association to come and explain the role of the budget committee and how it fits in with whether it's select board or school board or the precincts. I thought they did a great job, and I
Mhm.
think that, I hope that will result in fewer issues about where the turf stops and starts between the different committees.
Mhm. Although they noted several gray areas, I would add.
Yeah, and there will always be some.
Yeah.
Were a lot of the budget committee able to attend?
I think
All
everybody
but,
except Victoria.
all but one.
Okay. Oh, great.
All right.
And Wednesday is the town budget presentation to the budget committee, 5:30, or whoever wants to attend.
It's optional.
For me, it's optional.
Oh, it is?
Then for me,
Thank you for doing that. Okay, so last under new business is job description review.
sure. So I sent out a draft of the executive assistant grant coordinator job description just for your review. I'll note while we're talking staffing, I did receive an application for our sewer water superintendent position. So
That's good.
just came in, so we will be working on that, but we're hopeful.
It's exciting.
On the bottom of page 2 in the bold, I think you're missing an H on physical.
I agree with you.
Thank you.
Did you want to vote on that?
Yeah.
We have this, I don't have any issues with the job description. A question, we have this in the budget for 2024 for 12 months. But are you looking to try to hire right, as of January 1 or wait till April?
If you approve this tonight, I'd like to also ask that we move forward.
Okay. I'm not opposed.
Any other thoughts on this job description?
Will this position also be looking for grants?
Possibly, but probably not so much. But there's a lot of administration around grants
Mhm.
and deadlines and you're also talking 24 hours a week, which is not,
That's what I was
A
gonna
ton.
ask, was is that the,
Yeah.
That's-
It's
yeah, job tasks,
Time.
yeah, commensurate with the part-time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do we need a motion to approve?
sure, that would be great.
I'll move we approve the job description as presented with the typo, executive assistant grant coordinator.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay.
Did you approve it with the typo so I can't fix it?
With the corrected.
Yeah.
Correction.
Believe that was.
This makes sense.
I think I said it wrong.
And, and any objection to advertising that?
No.
No.
Great.
Okay, still have 5 minutes. Town administrator updates.
Sure. Just to update, I had been asked and agreed to sit on the town administrator panel for the town of Warner, so I will be there tomorrow interviewing 6 candidates. I did not really realize it would be the week of our budget presentation back months ago when I agreed to that, but I think it's really important for us as a town that we cooperate with and provide services to through the ambulance, and also for the profession in general, that they're good candidates. So I think this is important. So and my other question, other than that, we're really wrapping up the year. I've been really focused on the budgets and getting ready for Wednesday night. And then we do, as I mentioned earlier, the pre-audit was today, so 2 of the auditors were here, so that all went well. It helps they come in early, which makes the regular audit go that much quicker. So we have scheduled in January the public hearing on Gould Hill. I just want to make sure I know how to advertise that. Are we looking for a weight limit or a?
Did we verify that we have to do a public hearing? Thought there was some question under the statute.
Oh, right. But then I think you had decided to do a public hearing, but I
Either
wasn't
way.
clear what the public hearing was on.
Isn't weight limit what we're limited to? Like there's no other like restrictions,
Pretty
right?
much. Okay, that
Is
that
that-
answers the question. If we have to do it, we'll do it on weight limits. If we don't, it will be on the agenda. However, it needs to be.
Is that
Okay.
also going to be the 8th in January, or would that be?
That was the plan, but everything changed Friday.
Yeah.
We could push that off. I
Okay,
don't think that's,
so I might move that to the.
I think we should, yeah.
second January meeting.
I'm anticipating that if we're talking an increase in tipping fees and green bags, that'll probably be a fairly full
Yes,
conversation.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So we can push that. off.
Okay,
Yeah,
we'll do that.
Yeah.
And that could be a public hearing if it has to be as part of the others, but. Good. That answers my question. And
Okay.
that is pretty much it.
okay.
We're excited about the construction that's happening, so.
What is happening?
Yeah.
So Dan is adding a closet, which will be able to keep all the election things locked correctly. And then an additional office, so, which will be good.
Exciting.
I would like a tour when that's done.
You will.
Where is the extra office going to be?
Well, it's right here.
Okay.
It's no new space. It's just really adding one door,
Yeah. Okay.
so.
Okay, thank you. So I think if we have everyone here from economic development, we could go ahead and start. That's our one public appointment. So we have the EDC with potential additional TIF district and also the role of the EDC. So I don't know. Hi, I didn't see you over there. Would you guys like to come up and join us? But then they can hear you.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, you said there. This should advance it. I think.
How does it advance?
I don't know if it will since it's a PDF, not a
Uh,
PowerPoint,
Oh,
unless you can scroll.
worked earlier, but I can scroll too. But now it's screen shared, which makes it adds a layer.
All right, we can start there, Neil.
Who's doing that?
Just taller and I'll move it.
Okay, sounds good. Good evening, everybody. My name's Ian Hart. I'm the current chair of the Economic Development Committee and appreciate you having us here tonight. I know we have a few members of the committee here, so I'd invite the committee members who are here to please stand, just be recognized. Thank you for being here on your night off, and Stephen, of course. And we have Anna Wells, the town's economic development director, with us as well. In a nutshell, the Economic Development Committee is interested in the town's businesses, helping our businesses in the ways they need, helping them be sustainable, helping them grow if they choose to do so, and inviting new businesses to town. One of our proposals for that coming up, for which we hope to get some feedback from y'all tonight, is a new TIF district. And to talk about that, I will turn the mic over to Anna.
All right, so we can move past that one. Concept number one. So we actually have two things we want to present to you for kind of to gauge your temperature, get some feedback on you, from you, to see if these initiatives are things that the select board would support the Economic Development Committee carrying forward and partnering with you all. So the first one is the creation of a new TIF district. So go to the next slide, just as a reminder of what a TIF district is. Essentially, it's a mechanism for capturing the increase in a property tax revenue from new development within a district. So new tax revenue within a defined physical area. And then that additional tax revenue is used to reinvest back in that same area to really be a draw, an incentive for additional development. So the purpose is really to stimulate development or redevelopment of commercial property, expand the tax base, expand and enhance employment and earning opportunities for residents in Hopkinton and in the region, and then to encourage other businesses to locate or to grow in the community. So there's a little graphic there, so you can see that this is totally hypothetical, but if the assessed value before the TIF is $1 million, that's sort of that's used as the base value, and then any incremental assessed value, the tax revenue gained from that incremental assessed value is put into a fund. And then after the TIF purpose has been fulfilled, the TIF will end, and the total assessed value is then all of that tax revenue then goes to town general funds.
And just a very simple question. We're in a year or so, we're going to be having a revow.
Yeah. Mhm.
Is that going to be straightforward as far as the TIF is concerned?
Yes, it doesn't, the reval will just affect the assessed value. And so it will, bump up likely, according to some of our estimates, we're undervalued by about 50% in many cases. So it will increase the assessed value, and then that additional tax based on that new assessed value will be captured in the TIF, which means that the TIF fund grows quicker, which means that ideally the purpose of the TIF can be accomplished sooner and then come off. The TIF can then go away, and what's remaining is an increased an overall increase in assessed value.
If the TIF was paying in total, let's say $1 million a year in taxes as a starting point, and then
Okay.
there was a reval, went up 50%, they'd still be paying $1 million of taxes to the town as opposed to going into the TIF fund basket.
So when the base amount, when the base assessed value is established. So for example, so in the next couple of slides, I'll just quickly talk about, we have 2 existing TIF districts. So the base value for those was set in 2018. So any increase in assessed value, so from, it's not $1 million, but say it's $1 million, that was what it was in 2018. As the property values increase, it's just that incremental amount of tax revenue that goes into the TIF fund. Everything, so that the taxes raised on that initial $1 million go to the general fund, go to, to the budget. But the incremental amount goes to the TIF fund.
The incremental amount due to additional investments.
Yes,
But
due
if the
yes.
reval, just because it happened, meant that 1 million went to $1.5 million,
Mhm.
what would,
That
amount would be taxed for going into the town?
anything above the base amount.
Yeah.
Anything above the base amount established in, in our case, 2018.
Anything above $1 million then.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that hurts everybody else in town
You
initially.
you could look at it that way, but it's set up to spur more economic development in a specific area, and using that TIF fund to reinvest back in that area ultimately helps everyone by increasing the assessed value of those commercial, by spurring more commercial development and increasing the assessed value on those commercial properties by the end of
I agree
the TIF plan.
I agree in the long run,
Mhm.
looking at the short run.
Okay.
In the first year after a reval,
Mhm.
it sounds like it's gonna hit the other taxpayers.
There's a timing consideration to it.
Mhm.
It's not a right or wrong. It's not a win or lose. You would getting more funds into the TIF district to make
Mhm.
make whatever the goal is of the TIF faster, probably,
Mhm.
if you do it before the reval. But if it's, if it's the town's wishes, if it's the select board's wishes, you could wait till after.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth the discussion. I mean, this is a mechanism that we have used already twice in town. I would argue in one case with pretty good success, because we're pursuing a significant sewer and water expansion around exit 6, and there's an existing pot of money available to begin that process that doesn't have to be added and raised by appropriations. It's existing. So that's the point of it, is to start building that fund without having to raise and appropriate additional funds for projects like water sewer expansion.
I agree, that was the way we did it, but if we're looking at a 50%
Mhm.
reval increase, there's another consideration coming into play.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that's definitely worth discussing. I mean, to Ian's point, either, you can make an argument for doing it before the reval, and then you capture that increased assessment, which may be to the detriment of other properties. Or you could wait till after it's done, and that sort of hit to others would be less. Yeah.
Okay, I've taken enough. Thank you.
I wasn't expecting it so early in the presentation. It's my first slide. Okay, any questions on how the TIF works? I think we've covered that. Okay, so like I said, we have 2 TIFs existing in town. This is they're in the yellow. So this is the TIF district around exit 6, the primary purpose of which is to extend sewer and water infrastructure to support the businesses that exist in that area. And the next one is also in yellow here. This is the so-called Hart's Corner TIF district. This is on the border of Henniker and Hopkinton, over by the intersection of where the Dunkin' Donuts is. And the purpose of that was more general, not specifically water sewer, like exit 6, with infrastructure improvements associated with developing commercial multi-use, multifamily development. So that's in the existing, those are the 2 existing TIFs established in 2018. So what we want to talk about tonight as a potential idea is establishing another TIF district, also in the West Hopkinton area near Hart's Corner, which would encompass there are many names for this property, the bioenergy site, the former paper mill. It would encompass that site as well as going across Maple Street and north across the river. So that big lot 10 there is what's known as the Cast Hill gravel pit. And that site cannot be developed, which is an interesting conundrum in some ways. And you might ask, why are we including that in a TIF district if it can't be developed? Well, one of the uses of a TIF district, TIF district funds is it's really any public purpose. So that site could potentially be developed for recreation, utilizing the existing open spaces, trails, other amenities that go along with, you could have trails and parking, other amenities that go along with that kind of thing. So next slide. So other than on that site and in the floodplain, of which, yes, there is quite a lot in this area, we envision that this site has quite a bit of potential for commercial or mixed-use development being the highest value per acre type of development that you can pursue. There are many recreational opportunities, as I mentioned. It's right near the river, encompassing parts of the river, as well as it would encompass a sliver of the old rail bed and between the rail bed and the river. And then there's good potential here for energy generation. So you can construct solar panels within the floodplain as an example, just as an example. And there's existing tie-ins because there's already, so it was producing power at one point, and there is existing hydro dam there as well. So there's existing infrastructure there to tie into for energy generation. So as I mentioned, one of the things that you can do with TIF funds is developing public amenities, parks, trails, and parking. So that's further down the list, but also you can utilize TIF funds for environmental assessment and cleanup, road intersection improvements. So if anyone's familiar with that area, that those are all likely activities that would happen there. It can also be TIF funds can also be used to establish or improve sewer, water, drainage, lighting, signage, utility poles, and lines. It can also be used for acquiring property for public purposes. So that would have to be, publicly accessible, public use if property were acquired. So just a little bit more detail on which parcels we were considering. They're mostly owned by Bedford Corp, which is the entity that owned the bioenergy. And there's a few town parcels in there. There's a condo building in there. And then there's some open land. Then we can come back to, so if you advance one more slide, we'll make sure that you have this and that everyone can access this. But this basically runs through what each property is, its assessed value in 2023. So it would encompass 150 acres at $2.9 million of assessed value. So that is the first one. We can stop there if we want to discuss that.
I'll just note that the Energy Committee, Town Energy Committee has talked about a solar array at the gravel pit on Cast Hill. I don't know if you are aware of that.
Yes, I am, and I don't know how far you've gotten into, well, so I'd love to hear how far that's gone. But I've also, in some of my research about that property, have discovered that it may not be able, like, no structures may be built on that property,
Okay,
in my understanding of reading the deed with the conservation restriction on it.
okay. And
So-
that sort of points to the same conclusion that we were gathering, that the interconnection with the grid might be a problem there.
Oh, okay. On that side, on the north side.
I guess it was on the north side.
Mhm, mhm.
Certainly not an expert.
Okay, okay.
So can you tell us what has occurred at the two existing TIFs since they were approved?
Yeah, so like I said, on the Maple Street TIF, that fund has been accruing as the assessments have increased. And right now, the major activity involving that TIF is the exploration of water sewer expansion. So we have been having those talks with engineers for a year. I wish that I was a hydrologist or a wastewater engineer and that I could do this and move things along quicker, but I'm not. So working with our engineering firm, who they're wonderful, they are experts in their fields and terrific to work with, but they have a process they go through, and they're right now in the process of putting together the scope of services with costs associated and working on getting us that plan. So that's
On the revenue, that's on the expense side, excuse me. On the revenue side, has there been any new development, non-residential development, or has all of the growth come exclusively from revaluation and market increases in price?
So that's been some of it, yes. But there has been, so McLean has done some significant improvements on their site. They're not brand new warehouses. They're pretty space constrained where they are, but they've improved their property. There has been increases in use, I would say. There has not been a lot of physical building that's happened, but there have been increases in use. The one major increase in building that's very visible are the residences that have been built on Maple Street. Those are within the TIF district because that is what the zoning allowed for, single family residential within
How about at Hart's
that
Corner? Has
one.
anything happened there?
Say it again?
How about at Hart's Corner? Has anything happened?
And no, Hart's Corner, there has been no increased construction. There is one house that is within the TIF district and it is currently under renovation.
Have you talked to the Harts about selling their property at all?
I have not spoken with the Harts. I know others who have spoken with the Harts. And my understanding is there's no movement.
I understand.
Okay.
You know, and I understand the value of TIF districts very well.
Good.
But we haven't made any progress on the two that we have. So I'm hesitant to establish a third.
I understand that.
You know, as Ken pointed out, we established them in 2018. There's been no significant investment other than McLean.
Mhm.
And so all of that market value the town has lost in terms of an ability to add it to the
For the
increased
general
tax revenues.
coffers. Yeah.
And so, you know, that's my concern here is.
Yeah.
Do we want to limit another parcel? But that's.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's exactly why we're bringing this
Right.
to public discussion, because those are all points that are, that need to be considered if something like this is pursued. As you say, you understand the purpose and the intent of TIF districts to spur additional economic activity.
Right.
So that is,
Just, I wanted. Slightly catching up on the TIF district concept. There's nothing about the TIF district that is purely beneficial to someone coming in, right? It's the promise of proposed improvements using the funds from the TIF district.
That's essentially right. In a larger development context, a TIF district would pay for water and sewer, and the increased valuation would pay the bond back.
Right. But it's a.
But we're sort of cart before the horse, if you will.
It
No, that's what I'm saying. There's like a chicken and egg problem.
it can happen in a number of ways. So it can happen where, I mean, just to use our exit 6 example, if there's no water sewer, folks aren't coming in because they need the water sewer to build what they want to build. So you need the water sewer,
No,
right? So that's one way that it can happen. But the other way that there can be public-private partnerships, right? So that,
Right, but what I'm saying is that like if just by creating a TIF district, there's no immediate incentive for any business to come to that TIF district because the promise is improvements in the future based on the revenues from the TIF district. But like if you just create a TIF district, it's not like a business gets a tax discount
No.
or any other
No.
really immediate improvement. The improvements come from the revenue of the tax, the revenue of the TIF district over time.
Over
so it
time.
gets reinvested back into it.
yes, except that
Businesses-
because the town has the ability to bond, that would be the only other way is that
But if
the
we're not
TIF
but if we're not bonding and then
Mhm.
paying for that with the TIF, then that doesn't exist. So.
Right.
Like for that to work, you need to have a bond.
Yep.
In tandem with a TIF. So without that.
right, which is
without-
probably how the water sewer project will ultimately get done.
Right. But in terms of like. Just purely creating a TIF district and letting it go naturally, there's like a chicken and egg scenario. You don't have the revenue yet to make the improvements, which then doesn't make anyone want to come because the improvements aren't there yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just offer one other thing for the board to think about with the TIF? I think that we can pick how much of the TIF
Mhm.
goes into the TIF versus how much goes to, a source of revenue. And so it's not an all or nothing proposition. And so if the concern is that, there's a reval and, that money will escape becoming revenue to be, expended however we want. I mean, we can pick a percentage of the increment, which stays in the TIF fund and the remainder, is revenue.
We can only pick that once at the beginning.
I think so. I believe so. Yeah.
Yes, you can amend a TIF, but if you amend the TIF plan, you have to reset the base amount, which is doable. So you could start with 50%.
That would require another town meeting vote.
It's a
Yep.
town meeting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that's right.
Challenging it.
Mhm.
I think.
Can you combine TIFs?
Not in a, no,
But you could.
not in a
you
manner
could
of speaking.
Destroy and recreate. A TIF?
You
Because it feels like one of the problems with the Hart's Corner TIF is it's relatively small. I mean,
Mhm.
But it's the more valuable property, I think. In terms of available development area, the exit 6 property will benefit from water and sewer. Got a ton of wetlands issues.
Yeah.
To the west. And not a lot of developable land to the east.
Right.
If that's east and west, north and south, right?
Yeah,
there,
no, you got
that's
it.
Where the highways.
Yep, you got it.
That's the constraining factor, I think, on that one. If you could get McLean and Fairfield to tie in, you'd have a huge user base. I don't know if we have
Right.
water for that.
Mhm.
And certainly the sewer system is in need
Mhm.
of something. But, you'd have a good user base if you could get the project off the ground.
Yeah.
If they agree to sign up.
Yep. Anything else on
Concept two?
TIF? We can come back to it and talk about it another time as well.
Are you ready?
So the second idea would be new for Hopkinton. Nothing that I know of has happened before. But speaking of Hart's Corner, there is a parcel of land. There were 3, now 2 parcels of land owned by the town of Hopkinton around that intersection, which came out of much attention and discussion over the last at least 5, probably longer years. The TIF districts were formed in 2018. There was a process called the Municipal Technical Assistance Grant, MTAG, which actually Jeff was part of that. Zoning changes, first in 2017 and then in 2020. 2020 was the year, again, Jeff was very involved in developing the Commerce and Community Overlay District. We worked extensively with Karen Robertson, Planning Director, to create that. That was established in 2020. There was a build-out study by Regional Planning Commission in 2021. And then kind of through that whole time, these parcels of land that are around that intersection were swapped with the state of New Hampshire. They were owned by the state. They swapped with some land in the Mast Yard State Forest, which is up, you can actually see it right on the upper right portion of that locus map there. So the town now owns some parcels of land. So I think we can look at the next slide. So 2029 is at the bottom there. The Henniker border, Dunkin' Donuts is on that bottom left in Henniker. So this is what's called Hart's Corner. There's a 13-acre parcel to the west of Maple Street and a 8-acre parcel to the east of Maple Street, Route 127. And as we've been saying, there is development potential there. It is, people have recognized that for years. That's why the TIF was established there. And the town now owning these properties is quite an opportunity. But it's been made pretty clear, at least as long as I've been here, that there's a lot of mixed feelings about what kinds of things should occur in that area. A lot of those previously mentioned studies and plans and rezoning, a lot has come out of them in terms of potential. But rather than to allow the town to have a little bit more control over what happens there, the idea is to ask for expressions of interest from developers. So next slide, let's see the next slide. So this would not be a binding RFP. This would merely be a way to solicit ideas for development, and you would assemble a group of residents that represent a whole array of town interests to draft this request for expressions of interest. And it would spell out what are the sort of parameters for development of this site, which would come out of, so those development goals would come out of things like the master plan, the MTAG report, the TIF plan, the current zoning ordinance. From the responses that come in, the community would have a better understanding of the level of interest from private developers and what is the actual potential of the site. So through the process, you also get great cooperation and partnership between the town and private developers. As I say, it is non-binding. So at the end of the process, the town could choose to pursue one. You could choose to put out a full RFP if something seemed to resonate. You could also do nothing at the end of that process. So nothing binds you to an outcome. So there are a few examples locally, not many. This is not a very frequently used process for smaller municipalities. Cities and more, regional development authorities use it pretty frequently. But a couple local examples. So one from Massachusetts. On the left from Newburyport, this was the city owned a former school, and they put out expressions of interest, requests for expressions of interest on redeveloping that property. Closer to home in the city of Lebanon, they used an RFEI process to solicit feedback and ideas for developing a small parcel, a small undeveloped parcel in their downtown. And that the Lebanon one I'm more familiar with. I know that has moved forward, and they did put out, so they got 4 responses to the RFEI, and they did then put out an RFP. And so that is what's in process right now. They were able to gain a better understanding of what was possible on that site, and then put out an RFP. So can go back. Nope, go back. Yeah, perfect. So that is essentially the idea for an RFEI. It would be a process that would be new. It would be probably, it would take a lot of planning and collaboration between select board, economic development, planning, other groups to move that forward. But as we've already mentioned, nothing's happened there since the TIF was created. And this now having this town-owned parcel provides a good opportunity. And if this process is something that ends up with good results, there are other places in town where this could be used. So that's that idea.
Neil, if you could go back one more slide, please. Does the process start with soliciting ideas for development from the community?
I think if you were to assemble sort of a working group, steering group, advisory committee to move this process forward, they would design a process that might very well include, putting out a survey to the community. That has been done to some extent for this property through, the MTAG report, through what's already in the TIF plan. But that certainly, if the group felt like they did not have enough of that background information, they could solicit more. Yeah.
Because when I read one and then I looked at the second bullet under it, I wasn't sure what comes first.
So in the occasions that I've used this approach or a similar approach, you'll get more creative ideas from developers if you don't constrain them as much. The flip side of that is getting anything approved here that is creative is a very difficult task. Mr. Planning Board Representative. And so the difficulty is how much money will a developer want to spend putting together a response with significant uncertainties. No water and sewer is certainly going to be chief among them. And then, traffic. Are you going to get stuck for a portion of the upgrade to that intersection? Density, uses, those are all difficult. And I mean, I've said it before, developers hate uncertainty. So if I were a developer, I wouldn't want to spend a lot of money to find out, oh, you can't do that. We use this very successfully in Washington. Those 2 examples both have water and sewer. We use it at Washington, D.C. for the old Walter Reed Army Medical Center. We did a 2-phase process. One was request for qualifications, which we got 11 responses. And then we narrowed that to 5 to qualify, to do financial due diligence and qualify and evaluate the impacts of construction and housing and retail activity and all those things. But again, Washington, D.C., water and sewer, beautiful old buildings, the ability to renovate them. I mean, it's $1 billion project. 70 acres, 68. But, you know, I think it's a good approach to try to get input.
Mhm.
You can't make it too complex for the developer. And candidly, I think having a steering committee design the process is probably not the way to go.
How, would you have an alternative suggestion for drafting the RFPI?
Take the one from Lebanon and see what it looks like.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you clearly have to be upfront about the lack of water and sewer.
Yep.
Whatever the setbacks are here, you know, the parcel is not long and thin.
Mhm.
One's 200 and one's 350, I think. Impervious coverage, you know, Market Basket would probably come. Pretty right on 202, but
Yeah.
you know, it's gonna be a sea of pavement. And again, not sure that's gonna go through the planning board. I know I'm the Grim Reaper, but I just try to be realistic and
Well, so if, I mean, if that seems like that's what's the impediment to development here, then we have a bigger discussion to have.
well, on that side, I think we do. I mean, you know, you could do residential there because there's not that much of an intensity, not there. Well, you could do it there, I suppose.
Mhm.
The intensity of sewer usage isn't that great with residential.
Mhm.
But if a developer were to come, they'd want to do, you know, 128 units on that site. Which you know, I don't have a problem with it personally, but I'm not on the planning board.
If it's concept only, and there's maybe less of our sort of time required to put it together, so we do sort of allow for some creativity. I mean, is there much downside to us, you know, doing something like that?
Well, let me ask one question first. Can we sell this property? We have to go to town meeting.
You can sell it.
Okay.
Town meeting's already granted that.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
We
So-
did that
So then
back.
the risk to us is creating bad feelings in the development community if we, it doesn't take long. It'll go through 25 different developers in under a week.
Yeah.
If we do something and then decide to screw it. You know, if they have now, if we decide we want to do something, and then it goes to the planning board, and the planning board doesn't want to do something, still, it's going to have a different negative impact on us, but still going to be negative.
Yeah.
I mean, it costs money to put these things together.
Oh, no, to be sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know the team that won down in Washington spent over $1 million putting their whole package together. By the time it was all done, that was the first phase and the second phase, but you know, I don't expect anybody to spend that here, but they're gonna spend 25, 35, 40 grand. By the time they get some architect to draw up the site plan that they want and do some renderings of what the apartments or the retail will look like, and you know, what's the parking gonna look like and that sort of thing, and just, it's a lot of money to invest. I mean, sometimes you gotta do it, but
Yeah.
we just need to understand that that's what we're asking people to spend. So we should be a little more confident than just maybe we will or maybe we won't, I
But
guess. is what I'm saying.
how can we be more confident? I guess is my
I mean, if the board were to say, we agree to sell this property subject to an acceptable offer,
Mhm.
you know, I mean, that's a positive step in the eyes of a developer.
Hmm.
It reduces the risk, doesn't eliminate it. You can't eliminate the risk completely. But again, developers like certainty. And every little, I know there's one on the line here today, you know, every little piece that you can reduce their risk, they feel better about it.
Yeah.
And you know, if it's a risky deal, they're gonna want to make 50%.
Mhm.
You knock that back 3 notches, they want to make 30%. Knock that back 3 more, 15% is acceptable. Probably won't go below 15, but
Hmm.
you know,
I think
just my thoughts.
I think there's also a question about what we want to commit to in terms of improvements for TIP districts. If the purpose of the district is to bring in a commercial development, to bring in revenue, to then improve that, what does that improvement mean? What we want to, if what you're saying is they want to see a commitment, what would be helpful to show this is what we want to improve with that?
So, I mean, from a practical perspective, there's not a ton we can do because there's no water and sewer there. Right?
Right, but we could say,
We could say Maple Street's gonna have to be widened with a turn lane and we're gonna invest in that.
Right.
You know, to help the traffic flow through on both sides, there's a center turn lane and. You know, you turn left to turn right to get into the either one of these developments, you know, it's not a ton of money for us and it's something off their list that shows a commitment on our part, but I don't know what the number is in the TIF district now. I don't know how much money they got. But,
About
It's like
half a
12.
million dollars.
Oh, and
Right.
for the Hart's Corner, it's about 12,000.
yeah.
It's not
Hart's-
much.
Hart's Corner is
Yeah,
not much.
for exit 6, it's significantly
if
more,
someone
but
came in,
Mhm.
redeveloped it, then there would be a significant amount of revenue going
Mhm.
into the TIF district, which we then could use to do that. Or we could
Mhm.
bond money now and then use it to pay. Like,
Right.
like what exactly would we be putting into that proposal to say, if you come here, these are the improvements we want to make in this TIF district?
Mhm.
Well, and I mean, I think it's back to the creativity thing, right? You know,
Yeah.
I want to build 128 units. That's going to create 1,300 car trips a day.
Yeah.
An intersection that right now probably only has 300 peak hour trips a day. And so, you know, it's clearly going to impact the ability of traffic on that road. You don't want stacking distances too far. You want to have a center lane so people don't tie up the rest of the traffic trying to get across and make a left turn. But without the magnitude, it just, you know, the town is willing to consider roadway improvements is how I phrase it.
Well, that and, you know, this is the current iteration of our TIF plan for Hart's Corner, you know, and that.
Decided we had a developer for Hart's Corner for those two parcels. One developer, both parcels. And it was gonna be a $25 million investment. We still have to go to town meeting to get bond approval to do some kind of road improvements.
Yes,
Mhm.
Back
but
to
they
the-
could be
Back to
paid.
the risk factor,
They could be paid through the TIF district, certainly.
but it's more than they have in hand, so they'd have to bond it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Go to a town meeting.
Mhm.
And then, you know, some of the people who are opposed come out in force and vote down the bond and we're back to square one. And that's, again, it's one of those risk issues.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if like, let's continue to discuss this, right? So I'm not trying to put an end to it, but if this is not a process that we want to engage in, then should the town continue to own this parcel? You know? I mean, I
And I
think-
think the genesis of owning certainly the 13-acre piece was access to the larger property. The ability to create sort of a main entrance, main drag,
Mhm.
whatever you want to call it, to make that property more developable.
Accessible.
than it is today.
Mhm.
And I don't know I have no idea what the Hart's number might be.
Mm.
And just to follow up on that, I mean, if we're not interested in doing a proposal and seeing what the interest is, you know, why have a TIF district at Hart's as well? I mean, in addition to owning it. I don't know. I guess I don't see a ton of downside for us to see what sort of interest there is. But I recognize that the interest may be less than we'd hope for. But yeah, we don't know until we ask.
The end of your presentation.
That is on these two
Okay.
concepts. Should I work from the peanut gallery? You might, if there's anyone.
And also, we're not like opening up public comment yet, but if you have a question, Yeah. right, you're on the committee.
Turn,
Um,
just
Clarify.
Push the-
May not be on.
Where's the button? The bottom?
There
Louise Cobb, Bournemouthville.
you
So I was on the MTech study and I mentioned that we were talking about a larger parcel at that time. And so when Bob Gersony was involved in this, we were actively pursuing the other parcel, the Hart's property. And since he's not been involved in this, it seems like it just dropped. So does it make sense to finally put an answer to this question? Like, are they willing to sell? I mean, I guess I don't understand why we keep dodging this. Because we were pursuing it heavy. Why aren't we continuing to pursue it to get a definite answer? Yes, they're willing to sell it for X, or they're only willing to sell so many acres for X. Because if we know that answer, then if we put a request for whatever that was called, then we can say we have 150 acres. Well, you're gonna get a far more interest. But we're talking about 13 acres. So it baffles me, and I've asked this question a couple of times, like, it just baffles the mind that we started out with this huge project. Now we're down to 13 acres, so what are we afraid of? Why don't we just ask the damn question and get the answer and be done with it? I just don't understand why we're not doing that. So the question is, are we gonna find out the answer? So we will know what we're doing with the rest of that property. Is this having this in limbo makes zero sense to me.
I don't know.
My response, Louise, would be careful what you ask for. Because, let me finish.
Yep.
If they were to come back and say, yeah, I'll sell for X million dollars.
Yep.
We can't buy it.
No, we cannot buy it. But we can put it toward, explain to them what we're trying to do.
Alright.
And put that out there instead of 13 acres.
Again, it's back to the same.
Yeah.
Evaluation of risk for the developer, right?
Yeah.
Now instead of I don't know, let's say it's a $20 million project. Now it's $120 million, $200 million project. So from the developer's perspective, to develop that much land, it's that much more of a project and that much more of a risk. Be great for us. Again, if you could get it past the planning board. As a mixed-use development, as a residential development, as a Walmart, whatever it is, it still has to get approved. And so if I, as the developer, am saying, yeah, I'll pay $200 million, or that's a crazy number, but I'll have a $200 million project, and I spend a ton of money trying to get that approved, and I have to walk away. I've lost significant money. Now, the 13-acre parcel, you could put 80 or 90 or 100,000 square feet on 13 acres comfortably.
Mhm.
Could put 150,000 on it if you wanted to have a tight development. And so, you know, it's not an insignificant, at $200 a square foot, 100,000 square feet is $20 million. I mean, that's not a small project.
But could you I've been to the planning board where they've done, where they have, done, not proposal, but, concepts.
Preliminary review of concept, yes.
Design.
Concepts, so,
Conceptual
and
consultation.
what they do, is contingent upon, so purchasing the property. So they kind of don't spend a ton of money. But then they are able to kind of get the feel of the planning board before they invest all that money. So I guess, I like to try to solve the problems and try to do it with the least amount of money spent. So if there's a way of doing that, I just think we would.
Well, if the
maybe-
board authorizes it, you make the appointment and I'll go with you.
I could do that.
Ask the board to authorize it.
Does that, all right, Would I be allowed to make an appointment with the Hearts and go and to have this discussion so we know the answer? So I can't make a proposal, I can just ask the question. Is it possible that we do that?
Is that legal, Neil?
I mean, I guess, good. Well,
I think someone can't go and speak on behalf of the town unless they've been given authority to speak on behalf
I
of
have,
the town.
no,
Right.
That's,
but I don't want to cross some line that I'm not supposed to cross. I would not be representing the town, be an advisor.
But then as a private citizen, you can do anything you want.
Yeah, that was
I mean, that's
my-
not-
I'm not a private
you-
citizen anymore.
Right, so only to, well, no, I mean,
Why do?
I don't see why someone couldn't say, you know, I'm curious about, you know, what your position is about maybe selling this, you know, can you give me some sense of your willingness to do so? And just, you know, to be transparent, I'm not here speaking for the town,
Yeah.
you know, but I just would love to have some more information, you know, can you give me an idea of where you're at? And as a member of the board, I don't have a problem with somebody going to get that information.
Yeah, because
But I don't think you're gonna get like carte blanche authority to, you know, sort of bind the
Make a
town to
deal.
anything. Yeah,
No,
and I don't think you want that. You don't want that, you know? Yeah.
nobody wants that.
it would be interesting just to get an answer from absolutely no, or yeah, I would consider part of this. But, you know, we just keep talking in circles about it, and I just,
Set it up, Louise, let's go.
okay, I'll go back.
I would just like to say, in full disclosure, I have no relation or no known relation to the Hearts of the Hearts Corner.
Mr. Hart.
Last word get around.
Have you been to ancestry.com?
Oh, boy.
No comment.
And,
Um,
you know, I get involved in real estate transactions all the time. My first two, anything in this town, my first two statements are, I'm a selectman and I'm a licensed realtor. So I want you to know that up front before you say anything to me, because I don't want to have any problems. So.
Say something else.
Yeah, so we do have, you know, these are two of the things that we've been working on. The committee has been working on quite a number of other things. If it's okay, I know we've been going for the better part of an hour, but I'll just go very quickly through our remaining slides. Thank you. So, yeah, thank you. The other ongoing and planned EDC activities include business outreach and needs assessment, which has gone from just creating the list and contact list of what businesses are operating in town to distributing a survey, we've just recently started inviting guest speakers to our meetings for 2024. Recognizing the labor shortages that a number of our employers are facing here in town, we've been, you know, I think is well understood, discussing that specific challenge to our employers. I think everybody here knows that we did draft proposed zoning changes, recognizing the temperature and that we had more work to do in terms of bringing the community along. We withdrew those zoning changes, but are committed to increasing learning and idea exchange around the issue of labor shortage and workforce housing here in Hopkinton. And has been sort of made very abundantly clear tonight, just talking about infrastructure improvements, water and sewer, roadway safety for business equipment, for workers, for customers, and pedestrian walkway and access for customers. Next slide. Our additional accomplishments just include being a Shop Small neighborhood champion, supporting the Starry Star weekend, being helping to establish the end of summer concert series, bringing customers and supporting both the sort of businesses that are located in Tookie Village, as well as those who sort of come out on a pop-up basis. Addressing business needs, helping to establish the housing committee to address that workforce housing shortage. And then working with the town's planning board to ensure land use regulation and zoning codes are just a little bit easier to support our business needs. Next slide. secured almost $350,000 in outside funding to enhance the economic vibrancy of the town. Everything from a solar array that'll offset more than $800,000 over 40 years to other opportunities to bring customers into our businesses. Next slide. And then just other infrastructure improvements to, making safer streets are more productive streets. Investing in the Riverway Park to bring people down, whether it's the farmers market during the summer or all the businesses that are existing and soon to be opening in that part of town. And then advocating for improvements at the intersection of 2 and 2 and New Hampshire 9. This is our proposed budget. The bulk of it is the Economic Development Director's salary for a half-time position. Half of that is paid for by the TIF district. And then other than that, it's just a modest amount for professional services, training and workshops, and community relations and outreach. And we'll make sure you get that slide deck, but thank you for your attention to that.
Thank you.
I'll just give a pitch to the Community Power Committee. I don't know if, you're aware that small commercial customers could potentially take advantage of that if they have not gone to a competitive supplier already.
Oh, that's great.
So I think that's something that,
Yeah, we can share that
simplification for-
information with folks. Yeah.
Anyone else want to, does anyone have any questions or comments on this piece role that you see?
Thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks.
So I see we have a hand. So we do have, this is the end of our official public appointment, I believe, with you two. So thank you for your time and that helpful presentation. So I don't know if, unless, yeah, go ahead.
The role of the EDC.
Yeah, so that's what we're on right now. It's the role of the EDC. So, well, I was going to say,
Oh, we can go.
I was going to say that if no one else wants to see anything from the board, that we do have public comment, and I assume some people want to make comments about this, but I saw the hands, yeah. But Amanda, since you're on the Economic Development Committee, if you want to make a comment, you're free to.
Can I ask a process question?
Yes. Ask it now.
Well, I didn't know if we were going to revisit the request for proposal.
Yeah, okay, so why, after Amanda,
Yes, that's
unless someone else on the committee also wants to say something, why don't we finish our discussion and then we can open up to the public comment? Hi.
Hi, Amanda Gilman, 168 Westbridge Circle. I started paying attention to town politics early on with my kids. And the thing I heard over and over in the school budget was, we're property poor, we're property poor. Okay, we're property poor. So as I follow this process through, I think, okay, we're property poor. How are we going to get, we're not going to get lakes, we're not going to get anything. We're going to get businesses. That is the only way that we're going to improve our situation in this town. So I said, what are we doing for that? I find the Economic Development Committee. I just joined last month. To me, it's common sense to develop this without the RFEI for Hart's Corner. We have a TIF, we've done all the things. It's prime real estate that's just sitting there. I see zero downside. Could we perhaps piss off the developer if we're not careful about what we do? That's valuable information. Yes, perhaps we could, but it's free. We have property that's sitting there. There's zero downside, and we're never going to know unless we try it. I also feel, on that note, this is my own little pitch, I kind of feel that, or I do feel the same way about trying to bring back or trying to initiate a tax incentive for businesses, and that's something the Economic Development Committee has already discussed, and I want to bring it back for 2024 because I think that we need to do something. Our taxes are high. What are we doing about it? And this is a free way to try and attack that with property that's just sitting there. I see zero downside, and I would implore the select board to give us the authority to pursue this. I think that it's extremely important for the future of the town, the schools, all of it. And we start here, who knows what can happen at exit 6, but you don't know unless you try. Thanks.
Thank you. Do you want to go back to that RFEI issue first?
Well, I just wanted to know if we, as a board, were gonna come back to those two requests at some point this evening.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, what's the?
Because I think, well, I think if we're gonna do the RFEI, that's a process that has to get started. And if we're also gonna put something to the voters for a TIF district, that's also a process that has to get started.
Mhm.
Want to take those questions that are up on the Zoom or not?
Um,
I don't know if we're doing full comment here or not.
I was going to suggest that we have our discussion
Sure.
and then open it up, if you guys all agree, unless you would like to flip it and have people.
Fine by me, yeah.
Well, why don't we go through the TIF and RFEI issue, and then maybe we should then open it up and then we can discuss the role of the EDC issue too. Because it might be helpful to hear from people first. So do we want to discuss and make a decision on these tonight? Or push this off to the next meeting? I personally, I think the RFEI makes sense. I agree with what Amanda said, and I have sort of less strong feelings about the TIF, but I don't know what others are thinking here. Like, do we think this is going to be like an hour-long conversation, or are people like? So what's your thoughts, Jeff?
So I mean, I'm not opposed to the RFEI concept. As I said earlier in the discussion, I'm concerned about another TIF district until we make some progress with the two we have. That's my whole spiel. And I don't think the RFEI should go through a big committee to be established.
Yeah, I agree with the RFEI. It seems like an easy no-brainer thing. I also agree, we already have an EDC committee who can handle putting it together. I don't think it needs another committee.
I'll agree with that. I was just wondering if maybe Jeff should be involved in the RFEI process.
I'm happy to help. I don't want to write it, but I'm happy to review.
I would appreciate your eye.
Totally about.
Sorry.
I mean, I'm supportive of the RFEI and
Okay.
fine with the sort of the direction the board thinks it should go in with the EDC and Jeff's assistance to get it put together.
Okay, so it sounds like we're in agreement on the RFEI.
That was easy.
We have
Um,
to have a motion for that.
yeah.
You know,
do you need a motion?
Think you should.
Okay,
that we encourage the EDC to create an RFEI for the parcels at Hart's Corner. 2 parcels, 2 town-owned parcels. How's that?
I'll second.
okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No, okay. Okay, so the TIF district.
So just as a little point of background and clarification, so I started drafting the TIF document for this area, and I got to a certain point and I realized, oh man, this is going to take a lot more work. We need to figure out, there are a couple of requirements in setting up the TIF district in terms of how much the development plan will cost and how much anticipated revenue there would be from future development. So that is why we sort of paused at that moment and said, you know what, let's bring this to the select board for proof of concept, gauge the temperature before we spend a lot more time or, even hire a consultant to put together more of a development plan.
So can I just ask, and I'm not familiar with the boundaries, is there a reason you didn't add this parcel to the existing Hart's Corner TIF district?
So if you modify a TIF, you have to reset the base valuation. So they're also not, well, you could make an argument that they'd be contiguous. It would be a little
I'm
strange,
not
but
familiar with the boundaries.
yeah, yeah.
As far as rebaselining,
right. You wouldn't lose a
It-
ton.
in the best of all worlds, we would have the two properties sold or under some kind of agreement
Mm,
and probably not transfer them till after next year's town meeting, at which point we'd have a big bump in the tax rate, right, the tax base right after we rebaseline.
that's true.
It's,
Yeah, no, yeah.
it's, might be rose-colored glasses, but it's a consideration, I guess. And again, I would rather work on the two we have for now. And if we think there's something coming for the two parcels on Maple Street, then bring this back next year to town meeting. Next year being 25, sorry.
I think, I mean, I just speak for myself as just one member of the EDC, but one of the attractive things to me about having a TIF district here was just starting to set aside some money to eventually, try to remediate that site and clean it up. And
If needed,
well, yeah.
we don't know.
And improve the road.
What's the contamination?
Unknown.
Yeah.
There are no outstanding use limitations, but I have not seen a phase 1 ESA, so I don't know.
And also the road is obviously pretty tricky right there.
Mhm.
And it would be really nice.
No argument, cutting the.
It would be
Right?
really nice. So, if there was, yes, we could certainly hold off and sort of deal with the TIFs we have. If there's a way to sort of acknowledge, the concern about lost revenue and not have all of the tax increment, the TIF increment go toward the TIF fund for this district. Maybe that's a way to sort of a compromise of sorts. But yeah, that's,
I mean, it's not lost revenue. It's just revenue is earmarked for something else.
correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's lost to the general fund.
Yes.
Targeted.
Yeah,
It's targeted.
Converted from
Right.
general fund to targeted.
right.
revenue.
It's limited.
Puts the tax rate up.
Yeah.
Temporarily.
Well, the road that you're talking about, Stephen, it's not 127,
No, 127.
Yeah.
so it's a state road.
It is a state road. There'd have to be some conversations with DOT.
Mhm.
But if there's no sort of land for us to propose, it's never gonna happen.
So, I mean, in terms of if there was money being set aside, is there a plan right now for what improvements we'd want to make? That we could then say to developers, these are the improvements we want to make. Please come here. Or is it more of like a starting point of, we want to make improvements, we can get money and then figure out what improvements to make?
It's more, we have some money, what do we want to spend on?
And it's more about like, okay, developer, here's what you want to do. Here's how we can help. We have a fund. If allowing a developer to tap into, for lack of a better phrase, tap into that TIF money enables a development to occur. Whether that's because of environmental assessment or cleanup, or that's doing a community well, that's doing a community wastewater treatment facility, that's redesigning that intersection or the road. If utilizing TIF funds makes that private development pencil out more easily, then that's kind of that is another point of the TIF, another purpose of TIF.
And Neil, would you mind going up a couple slides? Was it-
You're back.
Yeah.
So toward the beginning. To this point that it should go away. If it's a well-crafted TIF, just go to the graph there. So there's those two vertical blue bars. And I think everybody on the board understands this, but I just want to make it clear that once you complete the goal of the TIF should go away. All that tan new great tax increment goes to the town.
All the way from 0 all the way up to the 2 point whatever 8 million is all taxable to the general fund afterwards.
So in the, with regard to the existing TIF for exit 6, were we to complete the water and sewer extension to that area, then the TIF should go away and the tax increment should revert to the general fund.
But does that require water and sewer throughout the entire district or specific properties?
I think we'd have to look and see how it was.
It requires access to water and sewer, it requires the capability to tie into water sewer. It does not mandate anyone tying into water sewer.
No, but can you bring up the map again for that
For exit 6.
TIF.
other way?
So essentially the water sewer extension would be along Maple Street.
But how, I'm struggling
Yeah.
with the colors here. The blue gray.
Yeah,
area?
sorry. The blue is the economic revitalization zone, which encompasses most of the TIF, but not all. So the TIF is yellow. But it would go from, it essentially water stops.
I'm looking at the west, assuming this is north facing,
It is.
the westernmost parcel, which appears to be in the TIF, which doesn't appear to be.
Actually, the Army Corps land, I'm not really sure why it was included in the TIF because not a lot that the town can do with that, but
Not getting a lot of
That's
taxes on that one.
another process question that I didn't
Uh-huh.
ask, but since we're here. There's inclusion of town-owned properties in the TIF, which don't generate tax revenue at all, but they're
Mhm.
included as part of the assessed value of the TIF.
They're not.
In that chart,
you're right.
Kate was up.
No, you're right. That is on my, you're right. So you can take out,
Okay.
100 and
Don't know
something
how
from,
it changes the
Yeah.
calculation.
So
The base was changed this year because the town property at that third corner was sold.
Mhm.
So the assessed value of that third piece in the year the TIF district went in is now part of the base.
Right.
But it wasn't when it was
But you're-
town-owned property.
In the proposed, yeah.
And I'm
That's
thinking,
slightly
I'm
less,
actually
but-
thinking about the gravel pit site.
Yep.
Cause if that becomes a solar farm, which it may or may not be able to do. Then that would be taxable. Those would be tax generating solar panels.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that is an issue that we need to collectively resolve, whether or not that is possible on that site. From my reading of the deed, short of an act of Congress, I don't think that parcel will ever directly contribute to our tax base.
And it's literally an act of Congress.
Right. No, that was not hyperbolic.
That
That
was
was not hyperbole. That was actually take an act of Congress to remove the conservation restriction from that site.
I know a guy.
Yeah. New Hampshire has a lot of use.
For a couple of weeks.
So on this TIF issue, I was going to suggest, so for me, this sort of gets at like the bigger picture questions we have about the role of the EDC and like the direction the town is going. And so if others are supportive, I would suggest putting a pin on this one until perhaps our next meeting. I think we still would have time if we wanted to put it before the voters in March.
So sure. It would, if that ends up being the will of the board, yes, we'll get it done. I think that it would take, you know, I mean, if the board is supportive of pursuing this a little bit further, I would go home tonight and start working on it. I mean, to get it ready for public hearing, because you do have to have a public hearing. It's only 2 weeks prior to town meeting, but I think there's a significant amount of outreach and information sharing that would need to happen. So,
And our next meeting is January.
yeah.
Mhm.
This will be a 3-week.
It's January 8th.
8th.
We could, I sort of just, I don't feel, I'm kind of following where Jeff is right now, but I also, it feels like it requires more discussion, but I don't want
Yeah.
to hold us up if everyone else wants to move forward.
No, it's possible to wait till January. Because I think you're right. I think it deserves, it's not something you want to do in haste.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Neil, if you could pull up the list of the owners of the different properties impacted. Say for Bedford Corporation, has anyone approached them to understand what their thoughts are?
Yeah, I had a conversation with the owners of that site. It was very enlightening. They are interested, the current owners would like to just sell the property and not, they're actively pursuing buyers. So it's a little up in the air right now. But they have no interest in redeveloping the site themselves.
And the coveted properties, New Hampshire,
Mhm.
is that the dam?
That is the condo building. So where the number, I think it's right on it's on the corner. It's opposite. Yeah. So they own that parcel, and then there's a small parcel across. I think it's that must be Clement Hill across from the bridge.
Rowbridge
Road, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Where their parking lot and septic is.
Oh, right.
I would think more information is better. Might not be enough, but.
Okay, so are we okay to push this off to our next meeting, perhaps?
Can I just ask a point of clarification? So other than the discussion that we're about to have about sort of the direction of the EDC, is the board expecting the EDC to do any further work to bring back? Is that the sort of missing piece so far?
I don't have any like specific questions formed right now or like take backs for the EDC.
Yeah,
I just, for me, it's sort of like a bigger picture concept. I don't know if others have clarifications they would like.
What's their CC meeting? Sorry.
Our next, that's what I was just checking. It's the first Wednesday of the year, so it's actually before the next board meeting. So folks could reach out to the committee through Anna individually if there are questions they'd like us to take a look at.
Okay. That sounds good. So do we want to, I'm happy to open it up to others and then sort of finish the conversation ourselves or flip that. I don't have a strong feeling, but it's 7:20 and I just want to make sure people who want to speak on this issue have a chance to. So is everyone okay if we just open it up now? Okay. Do you guys mind staying in case there's questions specifically for you? Okay. So if people, this is just general public comment, but if you can speak into the mic so it's picked up on our stream, that would be helpful. So if anyone would like to make a comment or ask a question, I'll start with Bonnie because her hand's been up for a while.
Hi.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hi, this is about TIF districts and EDC. And I'm just sitting here thinking about a lot of different things, including the natural resource inventory that the Conservation Commission just did, and some of the goals and preferences that have come up in the Housing Committee survey of what people want to see in their town. And I'm wondering if the EDC, thinking creatively and outside of the box, would consider exploring a forest carbon sequestration TIF district. Now, I'm just floating this idea without knowing enough about a TIF district and what the parameters are on that. But I know that we're learning to value some of our land and our resources in other ways than just what can we build on it and develop it for. So one of the questions is development as in a built environment always the goal in a TIF district? And a related question is, does a TIF district have to be made up of continuous acreage? Or could it be a composite number of acres that aren't necessarily contiguous? So my thought is, if you had a forest carbon sequestration TIF district, the purpose would be to create a non-contiguous TIF acreage that would be managed for income that would come from carbon sequestration, and it would be sold to benefit residential tax reduction. And at the same time, it would protect our natural resources and our public health from some of the harmful impacts of climate change. I think, you'd have to set up a committee and explore this, but I'm willing to bet Mark Zankel could, off the cuff, offer a lot on this, just from his own knowledge from the Nature Conservancy, what they've done with sequestration. But you could assess existing town forests. I know that from our natural resource inventory, 70% of Hopkinton is forested. And that's about 20,782 acres of our land is forested. And so if we put that together and put together a carbon sequestration program using that acreage, combination of private and town-owned land, it would not require any infrastructure development, any investment, any bonds. It would simply require somebody who knows what they're doing to assess what the potential is for revenue from carbon sequestration, and to put together a plan for how to manage our acreage to maximize that sequestration to bring in revenue to the town. So that's just my thought. And I wondered if the EDC and the Conservation Commission could put a committee together just to explore. And I mean, you may be able to answer some of these questions off the bat and say, no, you can't have a TIF district unless it's all contiguous acreage, or, TIF districts have very strict parameters and you can only do this, that, and the other. But it's just something that crossed my mind as a way to meet the goals of bringing revenue into the town, lowering the tax burden on property owners, and also protecting what we have here now in our land base, which people continue to say they're very interested in protecting. So just a thought to float.
Thanks, Bonnie. It's very interesting. I did not know that existed.
Would certainly be a reimagining of a TIF district. So that's
Yeah.
very interesting.
I think that's a separate discussion. I don't think it's a horrible, issue to consider, but it's not relevant to what we're talking about here. It's relevant to the next activity of the EDC. That's my only concern. I don't want to get off track with this one.
Yep.
By thinking about another one.
All right, Andrea.
Okay. So, Andrew Folsom, 485 Putney Hill Road. I
don't think it's on.
Now it is on. Andrew.
No. Huh.
No, it's Andrew Folsom, 485.
Let's go for it.
Road. I apologize if this is going in and out. It certainly sounds like it is, so.
Oh, it's weird. It's like shorting.
Okay.
Yeah, there. So we can pick you up on the
Just
street.
cut the other one in before the.
I'll come in here. All right. Andrea Folsom, still 485 Putney Hill Road. I had two questions. One was just a point of order. We have some members from our business community here today. And I didn't know if this is when you all would be open to hearing from them, or if there would be a later time. So that was just sort of a point of order question.
I think, yeah, we have heard from some folks via email, which was helpful, but
Yeah.
yes, certainly if anyone from the business community wants to talk now makes sense.
Great. I'll continue my squat here since I have a microphone. So my other question, actually, I wanted to do a quick question to Anna. Anna, how much have we spent thus far on the engineers who are looking into the water and sewer for exit 6?
That's a great question. That is actually going to be more of a Neil question. Because
Did you hear the question?
did you hear the question? For what have we?
Does this work?
Yes. Seems like it's.
That's better. I'll bring it back.
So the question was about how much have we spent so far on water sewer expansion engineering with Hazen? Just for that portion, it's going to be hard to, because
I don't
There-
think we've seen any bills.
yeah, they're also working on several different projects for us, including asset management
But
for
they're-
sewer.
They're tracked separately.
So
so-
yeah, we have not actually seen the
I
bills
don't
yet.
think we've paid anything out of the TIF district. I don't think we've seen a bill for that.
So we'll pretend that we spent $20,000. That's $20,000 that was not raised and appropriated through taxes. It was $20,000 that the board did not have to consider as part of the budget. It was $20,000, and that's a made up number, to be clear. But whatever that money is money that we were able to encumber through that incremental tax in that TIF district already. So this I think is a real benefit, because I wonder if honestly, if a proposal had been brought to the board to raise and appropriate that money for this kind of survey and for this type of engineering, if either as a board or as a town, we would have the appetite for that, knowing that it would add that much onto our budget. So that's not even a consideration at this point. That's money that we've already saved, we've already set aside. I know, just speaking on behalf of myself on the EDC, we think a lot about a variety of both different kind of taxes that we can use, different ideas that we can use to increase development across the community. I've been on the board for almost 5 years. We only had the economic development director started, I believe, 2 years after I was on the board. Prior to that time, this is a community board. We can only do so much with the time and expertise that we have, having someone like an economic development director. And I'd like to note that we had someone prior to Anna. And as a board, we really felt that having someone who understood our community and our town was essential in order to move business forward, in order to move development forward. It's something that the town both requests, but also has a really hard time grappling with, because it does mean change. I think that we've seen some tremendous development and progress forward with Anna being a member. First, she was a member of our committee, and now as our development director. I certainly don't scoff at $350,000 in grants that was brought into our community, again, that were not raised and appropriated through taxes. I think that the website and other development that she does and really laying that groundwork is essential. If we as a community are saying we are open for business, it is imperative that we have someone in that role that shows very loud and clear that we are indeed open for business. We are a place that we want businesses. We want different entrepreneurs, to come to town. This is like a really hard squat while giving this speech. It makes me wrap it up quickly. So I just wanted to express my full and wholehearted support for Anna and for this role in general. You know, Anna is not going to be in it, you know, for the next 100 years because she is not actually immortal, but beyond the individual person, I know, shocker. I think it really is, if as a community we want to move forward and we want to be able to think creatively, we cannot rely on volunteer community boards to do all the heavy lifting. It just won't get done. And if that's the choice that we make, that's fine. But I, for one, am in full support of having an economic development director.
Thank you.
Stretch, Andrea. If you promise to be short, I'll put it on here.
Anyone else like to make a comment? Looks like we've got, Lauren, are you coming up to the mic or?
Going home?
All right. Byron,
You pick, you're the boss.
Byron, you go right ahead.
Byron Carr, Burnham Interval Road. I've followed the EDC for, what has it been, Jeff, 20-something years?
30 years ago.
30 years, okay. You know,
You feel old, but
I've been in the peanut gallery, I've been on the EDC. And I know the when it was reformed and, you know, the director was added, the expectation that I hear from the people in the town and the way it was sold was, it was for expanding the tax base, pretty much solely was what they expected them to do. And that, you know, identifying parcels, finding businesses that would be appropriate there, you know, all that sort of thing, searching for, you know, there's a lot of businesses leaving California. And I think the committee, the people on the committee could do a lot more than themselves. I know Andrea said that, well, there's not much time, but I've seen committees do, the people on the committees do a lot more work. And, you know, it takes time and dedication. But you know, community development projects are fine. You know, that's part of economic development, of course. But in this town, they expected, you know, more work on expanding the tax base. So I don't know how you do that. That's mainly the selectmen's job to tell Anna and the EDC what's expected of them. And that's what I've heard from, you know, many people in the town. So I guess that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lauren Clement, 86 Maple Street, had a couple comments on this and question. I guess the first one that I noted was you spoke of solar development could happen at the paper mill site. I was curious what was preventing them from doing solar development there currently. I would think they could build that there now. So I didn't think that was much of a driving factor. On the two parcels in Hart's Corner, there was no discussion about how that, I believe it's going to be a traffic circle, is going to impact that, but that's certainly a large component of those two parcels. I'm all in favor of another committee being developed, doing research, think tank, figure out what goes there. But I do see the concern of once you start getting developers, if they say they want to put a truck stop there, is the diesel fuel going to make someone irritated at the planning board? If someone wants to put multi-use in there with a gun shop and a X, Y, and Z, is that then going to not be allowed? So I don't know how you come up with suggestions that suit the town and a developer. That seems like it's a challenge. In the presentation, it was noted that half of the economic development salary is paid out of the TIP districts. And we were also told that all the funding from each district goes back into a TIF district. So I'm curious how that works with paying a salary when that person has to work on other projects. Maybe there's some leniency there, but that's if we're just working on Hart's Corner and we're only working on the exit 6, then anything else on that half time of salary would technically not be going directly to that. So I'm just curious how that works. And then the last one was if you are working on incorporating the paper mill site into a TIF district and people own parcels of property there that don't live in town, they naturally can't vote on this, whether they're in favor of or opposed to. So how do you incorporate their say into what you're doing with their property? Those are my comments.
Thank you for those questions. The paper mill solar issue, is that easy to answer? Why?
If they're a private entity,
Oh,
they
yeah, okay,
can
so there wasn't.
develop
right,
it
Okay,
with solar if that was how they choose to develop it.
right, okay. Traffic circle, the state has that in the 10-year?
In the 10-year
10-year
plan. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you probably have the maps in your head as well as I do, but for the most part, the right of way is, so they're not extending the land that they would use much, if at all, into the Hopkinton parcels. The right of way is so wide that they're mostly within the right of way and then into the Hennecker side a little
So the
bit.
state's right away there is large enough for a 2-lane highway. And currently the paved portion in that road is at the far end to Hennecker, that side, almost as close as it would go. So really, when you looked at those maps, you saw areas that were open that showed that the property lines don't go there. So that whole roundabout would go within current state right away, which doesn't affect the other pieces of property at all.
Okay. Anyone else want to speak or? Oh.
Michael Wilkie, Hutchins Hill Road, and I'm chair of the planning board, but I'm not speaking in that capacity. This is really kind of personal. I think the Economic Development Committee has a lot of great opportunities and have done a lot of great work. The one thing I think that's missing from the equation isn't at the necessarily the EDC level. It's really from a town perspective of planning. It all encompassing, and where we see disjoint, and this is just me personally on the planning board, is that the communication that exists between other town committees, conflicting, shall we say, objectives that are out there within the community. And I just think planning piece of it is so critical to all of this. Whether it be from an economic development of businesses and commercial activity, whether it be housing and residential included within the housing, whether it be low income housing, whatever the case may be, it has to come together somehow. And it has to be driven. If we really, really want all this change to occur, and change is tough, I agree. I mean, it's painful. We all experience it in one way, shape, or form or another, and we deal with it differently. But in this particular case, just looking at it, the component we're missing is the overall big picture planning of pulling everything together and driving it. And until that happens, I'm just worried that we're just fragmenting. I mean, this is great, and it probably fits into a great plan if it was to be put together. But what is that plan?
Mhm.
That's all.
Thank you.
Mike. Thank you.
Hello again. I was just going to say that if folks have the drive and the urge, they are welcome to join the Economic Development Committee. Lord knows I'm on enough committees. I am thrilled. Amanda just joined us. I will ask you show up to one of our meetings and I will tell you that you're now part of our committee. So I am very open, and I think it would be wonderful if more community members did join. That would be great.
Yes.
Hello, Trish Moran, 331 Main. I am here as an individual, but I also chair the Housing Committee. And one thing that I have learned over the last several months is there are two camps of thought out there. One, you have to develop the businesses to be able to afford the houses. And you have to have the houses to be able to bring in the workforce. Neither opinion is wrong. We have a symbiotic relationship between the different committees in this town. And I think at the end of the day, we have to challenge you folks. You're our select board. We take our directions from you. Tell us what you want us to do. So if there's any shortfall on any committee, I think that direction has to come from you. And we'd be more than happy to carry that out. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's coming now.
Hi, Catherine Mitchell. I just want to point out with regard to the two parcels of land at Hart's Corner that the smaller 8-acre piece, to me, the idea of developing that is in conflict with the natural resources inventory, which was just completed. At the end of the inventory, there are 5 recommendations, the top 5 priorities in town for conservation. And one of those is land that runs along the Kentucook River. So I have a particular concern about that 8-acre piece, less so about the one across the street, but the one that's on the river would be a concern for me. And the other thing I want to mention, we talk about bringing taxes down by bringing in more development. And I do understand that concept, but I also want to point out the flip side of that, which is really spending. When we moved here 40 years ago, I looked at what we were paying in taxes, and the schools were being touted as being excellent schools, even back then. And that was a draw for me as a former now a retired educator. But I took a look at what we were paying in taxes and I adjusted that for inflation. And I did the best I could to adjust for the fact that we changed our house significantly from the time we bought it. And I took a look at what we would be paying now in taxes, and it's significantly less than we are paying. So I think we need to take a hard look. And I know there are some things that have been out of our control. The state contributions to retirement being a large one. They've sort of started giving a little bit more, but I know that was a big thing. But I have kind of done some research on this, and we didn't used to be third. Is it third in the state now? Number 3, 4?
For what? For what?
Our tax rate.
Oh.
We didn't used to be as high as we are now, and it didn't used to be as unaffordable for so many people as it is now. I know that we've seen a large increase in staffing in lots of departments, staff where we didn't used to have staff. Doesn't mean we shouldn't have all those staff members, but I know a large percentage of what gets spent goes to staff with retirement, healthcare, et cetera. And I just wonder if there's a way to take a look at how much we spend per capita or what staffing we have per capita for different departments compared to similar towns. I don't know if that's the answer. And I do support bringing in good, clean businesses to town. I'm not saying that I'm opposed to that, but I don't think that's the only solution to the tax question. I think we need to look at why we're spending so much more than I think we did to have a similar town. I don't see that much change in the town compared to when I moved here. So I'm wondering why the taxes seem to have gone up more than they would have for the rate of inflation and, that kind of thing. So I don't know what that would look like, but I would like to see somebody look at it from that angle as well. Not to the exclusion of what you're doing, but maybe in addition to. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Alexander Pooler, 1102 Upper Straw Road. my wife and I, we're fairly new to Hopkinton. We've been here for about a year and a half. And one of the very first things I did when I moved here is I wanted to find out how we can get involved in my community. So to echo what Andrea said, we connected online and she let me know about the EDC as an opportunity to work in my community and brought me in. I enjoy the work that I am able to do. I also recognize that there are times that I feel like I may have bitten off a little bit more than I can chew with some of this. I have a job in Boston, the downtown crossing. So right now my commute sometimes runs upwards of 2.5 to 3 hours back and forth. So there's times that I'm having to race to and from. The work that we do here is very, very important for the community. And there's a lot of room for debate about where our focus should be, what we're working on. And all of that is great to have that focus and also to have direction from the select board and from the community about what their expectations are of the EDC. But one thing I feel like I need to make very clear is the amount of work that we're doing right now and the amount of work that Anna is doing for us right now in her capacity in her role, I can't imagine easily absorbing that amount of work for us to do in terms of grant writing, seeking out opportunities, and really kind of acting as liaison for our group in the town. She does a great job. She's an indispensable part of the work that we do. If there's something that we're not doing that the select board feels we need to do, we're open to hearing that. If there's a direction you want us to take that we're not currently taking, we're absolutely open to doing that. The communication back and forth is something that's really, really critical for us. But more than anything else, the work that we are doing right now, a lot of that has to do with the work that Anna's doing for us. And without that role in that position, and I have to imagine that Anna is working well beyond the part-time number of hours that she's being paid for, I don't know what else we'd be able to do without her. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Could also be on a different issue if you wish to.
You ready to move?
No, I'm not just saying this is our official public comment moment. So, all right. Anyone else online? No? Okay.
Oh, yeah,
No.
just wanna-
Bonnie, is this a question or do you have another comment?
Unmute. I just wanted to say thank you for all the work that you guys are doing towards making our transfer station a more efficient and effective place. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, so lots of good comments and things to think about. So I think we have on here role of the EDC, which feels like a big issue and a big question. And I mean, I think so. If I could just, if you'll indulge me, I'll just jump in on this issue. So I think that we have to have a bigger conversation, and many of you have said this, and I've had conversations with people about this one-on-one, and I feel I don't know what the right word is. Neglect isn't the right word. We have not, as a select board, taken this on in my time on the board. So this idea of doing it's different from the master plan because that has its role, but it's related. But I think I would like to just plant this idea for further discussion for the board. This idea of well, I'll use a term from another town I saw called strategic governance. So it's really, I think, big picture, it's about sort of a vision for the town, and you have input from townspeople and businesses and other stakeholders, and they're all part of that. But I think, you know, the master plan, I think, is more directed to like development and sort of thoughtful guided development of the town. Whereas I think this would be, you know, to Catherine's point, like what are our priorities in town? So like we have tons of things in this town that a lot of small towns don't have. And they all, I say this all the time, they all cost money. We just went through a whole budget process. So we have 24/7 police and fire. A lot of little towns don't have that. We do. It costs money. We have a beautiful library and senior center. Those are wonderful things in our community, but they also cost money. But I think, you know, we keep coming back every year, it's the same conversation, whether it's the schools or the town. You know, our taxes are too high. And so I fear that and I've always felt this way about economic development, this notion that you can just snap your fingers and bring in new businesses that are gonna lower taxes for everyone is just not realistic, in my opinion. So it's like, what do we do about this? So I think the EDC, what you are doing right now, I think is vital. And I think it's a more sort of holistic approach, and it does involve community development. And I think the things you're doing are super important to help the businesses that exist in town and to do things that help the community. I mean, we have such a vibrant little town here. I do worry. I think like my hesitation with the TIF district is like, I don't know exactly how people feel about this idea that we might bring in like a Walmart. And I'm not saying we're going to, but I think that those are the conversations we haven't had really as a community. And so, you know, I know my personal opinions are, I don't think a single large business is going to move the needle on our taxes. Do I think it would potentially fundamentally change aspects of our town in a potentially negative way? Yes. So it's like, you know, I think we have to get away from this idea that we can just snap our fingers and and lower taxes for the town. And I think, you know, at this point, it's like we can nibble around the edges. We can look at, you know, our spending, which we just did through the budget process. But I also want to remind everyone, we live in a state that contributes basically nothing to towns and municipalities. And we don't have an income tax and we don't have a sales tax. And so, yes, everything falls. I mean, we all know this. It all comes down to the property taxpayers. And so I don't think there's any great, easy solution to the tax issue. I don't think that means we don't think hard about this and try to come up with creative ways to make this town more affordable. I do think that we as a board should take on this sort of notion of strategic governance and sort of like a vision for the town, because in that way we can have these bigger, harder conversations about, you know, what does it look like if we had an opportunity to bring in a Walmart? Do people want that? On the housing issue, you know, I know the housing committee put in a ton of work, and I appreciated hearing Trish's thoughts. It's a symbiotic relationship, but I think at the end of the day, we weren't clear on like, what was the goal of the housing committee? What is the goal? What are we really trying to do with housing in this town? And so I know this is a lot, but I want to sort of ground us in this idea that there's more we can do as a board. And I would like to have more conversations about what that would look like. I think in terms of economic development, I see it as like sort of what it is right now, which is a lot of it is community development. A lot of it is supporting our existing businesses. A lot of it is grants and like thinking creatively and taking a long view. You know, we're not going to solve anything overnight. And I think Anna has done an amazing job in this role. And I thank everyone on the Economic Development Committee for all the work that you do. And these things aren't black and white, and they're not fast. And so I think we have to keep that in mind and really take sort of a long view with these issues. So that was a lot, but thank you. Thank you for indulging me.
So I sort of pushed for this discussion because we had a discussion, Stephen and I, of the board, but Stephen and I, regarding the EDC, regarding Anna's role. And, you know, my position is that it's far too focused on community development and not focused enough on economic development. And, you know, that it's a choice. And, you know, the fact that there's been very little activity in the TIF districts is one of the issues. I'm not saying it's easy to solve. You know, I don't think we're going to have a Walmart. Could have had something different than what's at the Fairfield site at the time, but nobody wanted to do that. The taxable value would probably be 5 times what it is right now. But I just think, and Anna and I emailed about this over the weekend or last Friday. You know, I just think too much of the focus is on community development activities, grant writing. You know, the gentleman who was at the microphone a minute ago, the first thing he said was grant writing. That's not really the role of the economic development director. And that, you know, that's my concern. I just don't think there's enough focus on the economic development side, and whether that's the EDC or Anna or the combination. I just think we need to rethink how that focus should be.
So real question, Jeff, what does that mean though? Like, what does that look like in your mind?
More marketing of the town, more talking with real estate agents, more talking with property owners, first I heard that the people out by the dam want to sell their property. Love that contact information. Not saying that anything can happen, but I'm certainly willing to make a few calls.
We'll talk.
We're talking the ride over the Hart Corner location. But I just think, grant writing it's not an economic development activity. Certainly not those grants, right? I work all over the country on a lot of economic development projects in a lot of small towns. I sent that list of grants to 4 people out of state who have been average of 25 years in economic development. And every one of them said, well, that's really community development stuff. That's not really economic development. And that was, and again, I don't know the ins and outs of the grants. I know some of them, but that was my reaction. And I sent it to 4 people and they all came back with the same reaction. And so I just questioned the focus, I guess.
Stephen, Thomas, anyone else want to speak on this issue?
You look like you're about to say. He's got that look about him.
No, I'm digesting.
Bad pizza?
Your comments.
For those that have sort of followed the board's discussion of this, and as Jeff just alluded to, he and I have different views on this question of, the role of the EDC and sort of how the director functions. And we've heard people talk about, unmet expectations for the EDC and the director. And I take the view that community development is part and parcel of economic development. I acknowledge that people can feel differently. At least a majority of the membership of the current EDC feels that way. People in other communities or even people within this community can disagree with that, but a majority of the EDC currently holds that view, and that's what we've been focused on for the last several years. That's what we've asked Anna to focus on. And it's been mentioned that economic development in the sense of expanding the non-residential tax base, bringing more jobs to town. That's a very incremental process. It's a very long and unfulfilling process. There's a ton of work that goes into it with, zero payoff in the short term. And that's one of the things that we have focused on. That's why we made some proposed zoning changes. That's why, we brought the idea of the housing committee to this board, because we recognized these were areas of town that we felt would advance economic development, but they take a lot of time. And you're really, in my view, there's no guarantee that if you do X, Y, and Z, that the payoff will be, fill in the blank. You can do X, Y, and Z and nothing will happen. And that's because there are a number of things that are just out of our control. We can't create some developer who wants to come in and purchase the land that we have for sale and put in the fill in the blank non-residential development that we want to have. So we have to do the best we can and put ourselves in the best position to capitalize on that when that opportunity presents itself. And to us, one of the best ways to do that is to look at regulatory changes, is to investigate housing in town and do those sorts of things, and also to improve the community, to entice businesses to come here in the first place. So I mean, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this. Because I acknowledge that you can hold a different view on, you know, what is economic development? Is it community development? Is it something more narrow? And you can hold more than one view on that. You know, we have determined, we meaning, you know, the EDC, that it looks like community development sometimes. And, you know, to the EDC, that's not beyond the scope of what we feel we've been charged to do. And
But fundamentally, Steve, and it doesn't work for the EDC. She
no,
works for us.
I was just gonna say, let me finish. I was just gonna say, if this board feels it should be something different, then, you know, that's what this discussion, I think, is designed to sort of ferret out. And if that is the direction of this board, then that's what the direction will be. But so far, we haven't had, you know, that clear answer yet.
I asked for it 6 months ago. We didn't have the discussion. That's why we're here tonight.
Well, we're here tonight having the discussion.
I mean, when the position was staffed, when Anna was selected as the economic development director, there was no discussion of community development. The expectation, when she was hired, was the focus would be on economic development activities. I'm not saying she has been successful. She's been remarkably successful in getting grants. 2 years in a row, we asked about accomplishments, and that's the first thing we heard during budget season. I got this many grants.
And I
All community development grants. So to me, the focus is, again, not enough on economic development and too much on grant writing and community development.
And I understand that, and I think the difference, I think it just comes to how we define what is economic development, you know, and like I said, you know, we can disagree about that. To me, I think that economic developing is far more encompassing than I think that you're defining.
How would an economic development grant look different than a community development grant?
Focus of the money.
Yeah, but like in which way?
Well, I don't know that we have any economic development grants.
Right. I mean, like improving the sidewalk in Kentucky, right? That is a community development grant, but it could also be an economic development grant.
Not really.
I mean, it improves the scenario for all of the businesses in downtown Kentucky.
It improves access to the community. I couldn't
So
tell you, I've
what would-
ever had
so what
anybody
would-
say,
but that's
I'm
what I'm
not
saying,
coming to
so what
Kentucky
would an
because I don't like
economic
the sidewalks.
So what would an economic development grant be?
Could be a marketing grant. Could be a workforce training grant.
Okay.
Could be a grant for an infrastructure study. I mean,
Yeah, no, I just don't have any examples, so I don't know.
yeah, no,
That's all, yeah.
question is, where are they? And, you know, the housing money it's everywhere. Right? Everybody in the state needs more affordable housing. It's, you know, that's why the program ran out of money. Now Ken's got something to say.
I'm thinking about, Jeff, when a prospective business owner is looking at Hopkinton, aren't they also looking at the community? Does it appeal to them? You know,
So, I mean, it depends on what their priorities are. We have better highway access than almost any community in the state. But the only part of it we use for business is exit 6.
and we're trying to do something at Hart's Corner.
No, we're not. That's the issue, right? We haven't done anything since we started the TIF 5 years ago. We have not done anything in terms of that TIF district to attract businesses.
But it was part of tonight's discussion with the EDC's proposal on how to proceed. So in that sense, you would agree that they're looking at economic development.
In that instance, yes.
And similarly for.
Why not in the past 5 years?
Why not what?
Hasn't there been an activity at Hart's Corner?
I actually can comment on that briefly, if that's okay. So there have been many starts to looking at additional development in that area. And the advice over and over again is wait until the state finalizes their plan for the intersection. So there's been a lot of kind of, let's go, let's do something. But
Yeah,
what is the state going to do with their, what is that going to look like? Are they going to end up taking more land? Are they going to end up having to close the bridge? Are they, what are the, what are the options? And I think the closer things get to, okay, pretty sure it's going to be a roundabout, the more realistic any development prospects become. So that's part of why there's been hesitation around Hart's Corner.
I mean, it's one of those risk factors I talked about before.
Yeah.
Developers hate risk. But
Getting closer and closer.
the last I understood,
Being
the
certain.
roundabout had been selected and it's on the tip. Could be wrong about that.
Yeah, no final decision as far as I know. No.
I also I wonder about like when you say like bring in new businesses, I think it's easy for people to say like, oh, our taxes are high and if only we had more business, they'd be lower. But like when what does that really look like? And when I think about like, we're next to Concord, we're next to Warner, they have exit 9 or whatever, where they have Market Basket and all that. I mean, I don't know what an economic development director or committee could do to make Hopkinton like more attractive in a way that would bring in big businesses that could potentially change the fundamental nature of the town. And so it's like, we live in a small town. We are not Londonderry. We're not Bedford. And I think most people in this town don't want to be that. So I don't know. I think we're talking about, like bringing in new businesses in this way that's like easy to throw around. But when you actually get down to it, like most people, I don't think want to bring in big new businesses. So that's where I feel like there's a mismatch.
So you're making the argument to eliminate the position because nobody's gonna come.
No, I'm making the argument for what.
So to Catherine's question earlier from 40 years ago when she moved to town, which was about the time I got here. At the time, and I'm guesstimating these numbers, right? At the time, the residential tax base was probably 80% and the non-residential was probably 20%. But because all of our growth over that 40-year period virtually has been residential, now that ratio is closer to 90 and 10. And so the school population has gone up. I'll look it up.
I mean, okay.
The school population has gone up. Since that time, it's come back down recently. So that's what Thomas was just going to tell me. And so all of the growth the vast majority of the growth has been residential, right? In the last 10 years, what have we built? The Everyday Cafe and the veterinary hospital down here. I don't think we built anything else.
Yes. I'm not disputing.
Sorry?
The Plains was new since 40 years ago.
Right, but in the last 10 years, I think the only thing's been the Everyday and the.
So I'm not going to dispute those numbers, but the one thing that I will say is that the increase in the taxable amount matches the increase in the budget. So it's not
taxes are a zero-sum game.
No, right. But so if you look at an increase over inflation of what the taxable rate is, it is increasing over inflation, but the budget is as well. So it's not that it's not that the growth is in residential and that's causing the increase in residential taxes. It's the budget is also increasing at that same rate.
And the budget's increasing because the population has increased, so we need more DPW and police and fire and all that stuff.
Yeah, but the roads budget hasn't
40
changed.
years ago, we didn't have full-time fire.
Right. Yeah.
And
We also.
had,
What we're paying for.
we probably had no cops overnight. I
Yeah.
don't know that, but
The town also neglected some things like roads for a while, which is why we're now dealing with it. We have these
we're
super
still
high
$20
cost
million
things.
behind them.
Right. So But Jeff, when you said I'm making an argument against Economic Development Committee, is that, but my point is I'm making an argument for what exists now, which is like this sort of, it's a bigger lens, it's more holistic. And it's like, I think about, we do have some amazing businesses and attractions in this town. And I think about it all the time, like how little we are, and yet we have all these awesome, amazing things. And I mean, I'm in Tookie almost every day going to the shops there. And so I think like a huge part of that is what, I mean, we got great emails from people who are here in town doing business saying they appreciate Anna and the Economic Development Committee. And I think that is super important. And I don't think we should lose sight of that. And so I guess I'm just grappling with this sort of mismatch between this, like, oh, we need to bring in more business and we need to like snap our fingers and make change immediately. And that's at odds with reality. And I also think it's at odds with what most people in this town, when push comes to shove. I mean, we saw it with the proposed changes to zoning. I mean, people, it's like, it's easy to talk about, but when you actually put pen to paper and try to do things, I think it requires, I'm not saying anyone's right or wrong. I'm saying, I think it requires deeper, more thoughtful conversation. And I think with housing, that was an example where we hadn't, it's not that people hadn't made an effort. I think that's like, it's one of those things where when people started paying attention, they're like, oh, wait, this is kind of scary. So I think, you know, it brings me back to my idea of the strategic governance thing, where I think we do as a town need to be having these bigger picture conversations. But I do just question, I think there's sort of a mismatch between this economic development in a, you know, in a box, black and white, and like what our reality is as a town. So I don't know. I mean, if we called it community development, would you have less of a problem with
It's a
it?
different focus, right? She was a community development director. She could write all the grants she wants. She could do all the improvements downtown she wants, or roads or sewers or whatever. I mean,
And you know what you would see? Growth of the economic base.
not necessarily.
But I mean, it's also not what, it's not what the position.
How
was.
do you
It's
propose
what-
to grow the economic base in Kentucky Village?
But it's not,
Conversion of homes on Maple Street to businesses?
it's not what the position wants, it's what we want the position to do. And I think what Mike Wilkie said really resonated with me, which is like, if I think of a good way that the EDC can be pushing forward growth, and like, if you wanted to just go out and email all the realtors in town, you could do that in a day. Like, if past that, if you wanted to really push forward economic development, something like a TIP district seems like the logical tool at our disposal that the EDC can use, saying, here's an area that we think could be better suited for more economic development. Here's plans that we can put forth on how we want to improve the area to bring in more development, and then start acting through that. But it feels like there's a disconnect between the EDC's purposes there, the planning board's purposes there, and the housing committee's purposes there, because they all link. But it feels like there's a bit of a lack of direction from our end onto how all of that should be pushing forward together. Yeah, I don't know. That's where I lose the train of thought.
Let me just sort of add to that. So say hypothetically, we had some restructured staffing and had a unified planning department, what would be the direction we would give them? So the structure would be there, but we'd still have to fill in that gap and say, this is the direction we want the department to go in. It should trickle down to all the various committees and staff within the department.
I mean, I think there's an ongoing process of reevaluating the master plans, but doing that in tandem with the zoning ordinances to then find like I don't think that by itself is enough, but it's easy right now to pull apart small bits of the master plan and say like, this is what we should do, or we should do this other thing. But
the development of a new master plan and new zoning is like $300,000.
No, I'm not saying we should do that.
Well, how's the master plan? Anybody know?
Some chapters are 2022, but the bulk of it is 2000.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, it does make sense, but how do we pay for it? You know, that's always the issue for us.
They write you a grant. I'm not laughing. Yes, I am.
Yeah, and I think that looking at the master plan and just thinking about these things, like going back to the proposal for a new TIF district, I think we will, and I think we will hear from some people who don't want to go in that direction. We will hear from people who don't want to totally overhaul our zoning and our ordinances. And that's important too. I think there's like an easy default place to go, like, oh, bringing in more business is automatically good and will solve our problems. But I don't think everyone agrees on that. And it's certainly something that should be thoughtful and intentional. So anyway, I'm putting it out the perspective that I'm not sure more is always better. And I'm not sure, that the majority of people in this town will agree on making major changes to zoning or, supporting more TIF districts. So it's just something to think about. So I think, like, for purposes of tonight, the Economic Development Committee will continue to function as it is. I mean, I think, Jeff, your points, even though I'm disagreeing with you, they're well taken.
Never have.
But I think these are important conversations. It seems like for the moment that the majority of this board, like, I don't think there's any like change that we're gonna make at this point. But I do think these are all, I mean, unless I'm wrong, but I don't think we're gonna take any action that's gonna overhaul EDC or the director's position. But I think there's a lot more conversations that we need to have. And I feel somewhat badly that we have not done that as a select board. And I think, there's no time like the present. So now we can start having those conversations and thinking about these big picture things. So yes. Louise?
So many things. My feelings of the EDC committee is well known to the board. Could I come in and have explained my frustrations? And I did ask, what is the exact roles of the EDC? And I asked you to get that in writing so that we would all be on the same page, and I never saw it. And now tonight, we're really not having a discussion. It's more, well, I think everything's going the way it's going. I think it's great. Well, it's not great. And I've been very vocal at all the meetings. So none of the committee members are going to be at all surprised what I have to say. None of them. And actually none of you will be either. Now you've talked about, not really understanding the roles of the various committees. Can you imagine being on those committees and not knowing what the hell you guys want? It's frustrating. Because I have a picture in my head, and I also remember the conversation when that role was created, and it was more economic development. I hear, because I've been on committees ever since I lived here, and I'm always on numerous committees. So people come to me and they talk to me and they say, hey, what about this? What about that? And I brought that back to you, and I have brought that back to the committee. And it's like, they don't want to hear it. You're focused on community development. You can keep going down this path, but did you come to any of the housing forums?
I had a conflict on every single one, but I wanted to.
So when you're saying people are not open to change, I can tell you from the people who came to those, you're not correct. Everybody was
let me just
open.
correct you. I didn't say that there are some people who are not open to change,
Right.
or if they don't understand it, that's why the brakes were put on, was my point.
Right. So if they don't understand it, and it's kind of like what you had said, well, a Walmart, I think everything is about location. I don't think it's what people object to. I think it's because they don't have the information. So if we wanted to do a Walmart or some sort of a development, another, like a McLean's, it's all about where you put it. So when people come and they're not for it, they start talking about, oh, well, down Kentucky Village and this and that. Well, that's crazy. You would not put one there. So in the same thing with housing development, Before I get on that committee, and I mentioned it here, I've mentioned it at the planning board, that the big thing that has not happened and should have happened is you need to look at Hopkinton as a whole. So you've got a housing committee looking at just housing. You've got EDC looking at community development. When are we going to sit down and say, what is the best for the town of Hopkinton? What locations should be approved for what? And we don't do that. So everyone's doing their willy-nilly thing. No one's communicating. There's no plan. And I have mentioned this several times. And it's like I get to feel like sometimes at some of these meetings, it's like, I don't know a damn thing. But I'll tell you, I have been extremely successful on all the committees I've been at. All of them. Successful in what the goals we have accomplished. So I bring forward information, and if I'm going to keep getting like it's no before the conversation is even done, then you need to look at that. And do you want community development? If you do, you need to write that out, because right now the mission statement talks about economic development, commercial development. I mean, those kinds of things. We're not doing that. So you need to be clear of what it is. I'm not interested in community development. I'm not, zero interest, because Tookie has been doing fine for years. And in the 5 years, if our focus has been mainly on downtown, then how come the chamber has folded and they have rebranded? So how much did we do to help that? What have we done to help that? I mean, really, what has EDC done that has changed Kentucky Village in 5 years?
Well, we heard from some business owners who gave us specific examples.
And they're from the Kentucky Village, I bet.
That was your question.
No, I'm just saying, you know, you really need to look at this. Community development is a touchy-feely good thing. And I'm not against it, but it should not be the focus. We missed a great opportunity. We should have been paying attention to Exit 6. And now all that land that should have been rezoned, it was actually looked at to changing zoning earlier EDC committee to changing that to B1. And now we've got these mega mansions there. What a wasted opportunity that was. All that land right off Exit 6. These are the kind of things that drives me nuts. And I get so frustrated because the board does not come out in unison to say, we really need to work on developing more business. And it can happen. We don't have much, but we can do it. But if there's no support here, then, I mean, what the heck? Why bother? Whether you have a director or not, I'm not against Anna at all. I really am not. It's just, it's the position. And if she was given clearly defined things, I don't think we'd be having the conversation, number one. If the EDC had really clear, defined what we're supposed to be doing, I think we could move forward in a better, more, an easier way of moving forward, and we can do it in unison, and then we have a plan, we have a mission. Right now, it's, you know, what can we do to fix the sidewalks, or what can we do for this or that? I wasn't for the TIF, but they'd already voted on it. So I think, so the frustration for me as being on several of the committees that has been brought up is we don't have a clear direction from you. You look at, I mean, someone else is creating the mission statements. You look at them, you don't make any changes. And so that's, and then you don't look at Hopkinton as a whole. You look at this little piece and you're looking at this little piece, and you don't look at how Hopkinton should perform as a whole. And that has been one of my complaints. I have brought it here. I brought it to a lot of places. So I'd like at least that to be looked at, and really look at the role of the EDC. Look at the mission statement, and are we doing it? I'm saying no. So look at it and then tell us exactly what you want us to do, because it's not clear to me. Thank you.
So I don't want to be repetitive, but I agree with you, which is about the whole, like, you know, there's some silos and there's committees doing pieces, which is why I brought up this idea of like strategic governance and a bigger vision and thinking about our broader long-term goals and how all these pieces fit together. So I agree. I just feel badly we haven't done it yet. So which is the reason I'm bringing it up now, because I think that needs to be done.
Well, and the other piece is we talked about forming a housing committee, and how many weeks did it take you to do that? It ran into months, multiple months. In the meantime, you had already hired Ivy. Ivy was working with Anna, not the housing committee. So we get the report back, it's done, and we're like, wow, some of this isn't even in the direction that we wanted to go in. We changed things. So again, it's so important. You gave us something to do, but then we didn't do it. It was pretty much done and handed to us. So that first part of developing that committee, we didn't express what we wanted or what we needed or the background information that we were looking for. We didn't have a chance to do any of that. So those are the kinds of mistakes that keep happening over and over. And it really causes a problem. So I don't know, but we can't stay single-minded. And I find the board is very single-minded. And I don't mind saying that, but anyway, you're very single-minded. And, you know, one agreed, then you all agree. And there's really not a whole lot of open discussion other than Jeff.
I disagree with you.
Oh, I know you disagree.
Well, but just because I disagree doesn't mean that I'm not listening and doesn't mean we aren't having these conversations,
Right.
because we're actually having the conversation right
Yeah,
now.
right.
So I take umbrage with that a little bit. So just
Yeah,
because we
but-
disagree doesn't mean we're not listening. So we don't have to get into a back and forth, but
Yeah, I'm not going to get into it now because I have come here and have had discussions. And I feel like you didn't even get back to me. I mean, you really,
I honestly don't remember what.
you don't
you
remember
were
my
at-
coming in.
I do remember you coming in. I don't know what you asked for that we did not provide you. But
Job description of what you wanted EDC to do. And you didn't,
Job description.
but we're not,
I think she means a committee charge.
And can I just offer that the EDC does have a strategic objectives document,
right?
which we put a lot of time into,
Yep.
which I know that
Yep.
you were not part of the board at
Yep.
the time when most of that was crafted. But just for everyone participating or listening, like there is a document that is a guide for what we're doing. You
Right.
can disagree with it, which I
Yep.
know you disagree with it,
Yep.
but it does exist.
I know it exists, but it also exists, the majority of it, only until recently. It's been focused on Kentucky Village. Now, are you going to disagree with me on that?
I'm sorry, what?
That the most of that charge is strategic planning. Most of that, up until recently, has been focusing on Kentucky Village.
I don't think I agree with that, but I
Well, we
don't
can
think
pull it
should have
out.
That conversation right now.
Yeah, we're not going to have it now, but we could easily pull it out and look at it. But most of it does focus on in the village. It does not focus on other things. Recently, that has been changing.
thank you for those comments, Louise. Yeah, and I just want to be clear that like my comments earlier, I'm not saying that anyone is right or wrong on these issues. My point is more that they are complicated. And there are a lot of committees in this town. I did want to go to the housing committee meetings. And I honestly had a conflict with everyone, which is why I had conversations with people to try to inform myself. But people try to show up to things. They try to keep track of things. There's a lot to keep track of. And so I think for most people in this town, you know, we have a lot of really great volunteers and a lot of great people putting time and energy in, and we're not perfect. We're doing the best we can. I think we as a board certainly listen, and just because we don't agree with someone doesn't mean we didn't listen. So I just want to be clear about that. And I do think it's super important that we're having these conversations, and we are having them now. So things might not move as quickly as people want on certain things. But I do think this year especially, I think has shown us all that there's a lot of tough, thorny issues, especially for towns our size, that, it's a tough balancing act. We have a lot of great things in this town. A lot of things cost money. And we are small, but I really think we are very fortunate to have so many people who put so much time and energy, including you, on these committees. So anyway, I just want to emphasize that again. I think we live in a great town, and have a lot of really great things going for us. So, okay. Is there anything else on this topic? I mean, there's more to come, I'm sure, but I do appreciate everybody contributing and everyone who wrote to us. So,
I mean, I hate to prolong the meeting, but I would be just curious to know the board's thoughts on what the process looks like to sort of try to resolve this. I mean, what I want to avoid is having this exact same conversation in 6 months.
yeah.
I think everyone would probably prefer to avoid that. And so if we can just take a little more time and just sort of think about how we're going to get to wherever we end up, just the process. I mean, I would.
Are you talking about the Economic Development Committee specifically?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that my take is there is a charge, there is a job description. It doesn't seem like the majority of this board wants to reopen that and overhaul Economic Development Committee. I think it is pretty clear what the goals are, what the charge is. And so I don't know what to do I don't know what there is to resolve, honestly. Yes, there's people who disagree, but that doesn't mean that it's not clear. I think it is pretty clear.
Okay.
Unless others think there's further action to take.
I mean, I don't disagree with that, but I mean, I guess you've teed it up nicely, just to hear from the other board members about what they may or may not want to do going forward with this. And just, for transparency's sake, I agree. I think that it's clear what the EDC focuses on, and as I've said already, I think it's the correct one.
Can I?
I still think we need a better way of organizing goals between the three specific committees.
It's not gonna change, but they need to read it.
I don't necessarily have a plan on how to achieve that now, but.
Can you say your first comment again? I didn't hear it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I still think we need a better way of the planning board, the housing committee and the EDC kind of moving together. But I don't have a good solution to that. Yeah, it's worth thinking about though.
If I may, as the chair of the committee, it's also very much present in mind. And Michael, I hope I'm not violating your calendar in saying that we have plans to meet.
He just left.
Michael left. I can violate his calendar at will. We are meeting on Wednesday. And now that I've laid eyes on the chair of the housing committee, I'm eager to meet with her as well. So that we can, at least as committee chairs, sort of start some of that work and be responsive to the board and the town.
Okay. And I think that the select board can have a more active role in, trying to make these things a little more cohesive. So it's not siloed. And I do think if we embark on this sort of vision journey, I think that these things might come together a little bit. Yeah.
Branding and marketing right there.
Yeah. So I don't think there's clear-cut answers to that, but I think even just our awareness, having lived through the last year, of how these things do need to be woven together, and there does need to be some, we're generally moving in the same direction. Yes, Trish.
Could I make a recommendation for consideration that perhaps the select board meet with the chairs of all of these committees together once a month, perhaps? We've got housing, planning, zoning, EDC, and conservation commission, all trying to accomplish the same goal of the master plan. Is that something that you would be willing to discuss and perhaps figure a way to incorporate it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what exactly that would look like logistically, but I think something like that makes sense. So
I guess I like that idea. I guess my concern is that some of those boards have a statutory mandate to do certain things. And, you know, we as the select board, I think, have limited sort of oversight to, you know, sort of step in the way of that.
But even if it is a one-way flow of information.
Oh, yeah, no,
From
I
planning
don't wanna
board
shut down.
to select board, or
Yeah.
from housing to, or from conservation to, you know, even if it's.
Right. Yeah, thank you. That I don't want to shut down that avenue of communication, just that we may not be able to resolve any sort of points of conflict.
And maybe monthly is to, quarterly, yeah. Perhaps that would be a better solution or option.
I think that makes sense. And any sort of meeting would be more
Like
than
a select board work session
what
on
we're-
off Monday.
perhaps.
Because we don't have enough meetings.
It's true.
And you better just define clearly what the goal of those meetings are
Mhm.
and what people's roles are and how that's going to be done, because otherwise it's not worth doing.
I think, yeah, I don't think we need to solve this right now, but perhaps even if it was like having various chairs of the committees come in on one of our regularly scheduled meetings to give us an update or something like that would be more than what we're doing right now, which is like, I feel like we get bits and pieces because we all sit in
I
different
think though
committees.
the issue is the coordination of those committees. It's not so much information coming to the board, although more information is always good. But I think it's how those committees work or don't work together that is the issue that needs to be solved.
Okay. Okay, so I think we can wrap up this agenda item. And thank you. Louise, do you
I
have?
just got one thing, and that will you please look over the charge?
Yes.
Just look it over, and are we doing it? Because when I see over and over, commercial businesses. I mean, I know what commercial businesses is. And are we working with commercial business, or are we working with retail? Has the focus been retail or commercial? That's the thing. That's the kind of thing I'm trying to get expressed. So look at this. And if you don't, either direct us to not do the commercial, which is what I would like to focus on. But if we're going to continue with community development, so what you say we've got to charge and what we're supposed to be doing is different. And I've said this repeatedly, so. But you're all in agreement that it's okay, but I don't know when the last time you read the charge. So if you look it over, I feel strongly we are not following this particular charge. So if that's not the direction you want us to go in, that, fine, just tell us, but be clear. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Appreciate that. Okay, so I don't think we have a non-public tonight, do we? No. So we have other. I don't know if anyone has anything for other.
Talk about greenback prices?
Yeah. So I just want to thank you guys for coming in, and thank you for the great discussion. I think there's more to come on this, obviously, and appreciate everybody's time and energy on these issues. And
Thank you for the opportunity to have the discussion, because
Yes.
we
Agreed.
agree that more coordination and more holistic thinking and planning are all things that would benefit the town as a whole. speaking as a resident and would benefit the direction of economic development, speaking
Mhm.
as the economic development director.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so if there's no other, then Jeff, I think is gonna move to adjourn.